Hey y'all. Sorry, I was running a minute late. I was off doing something else. So we're going to get into this. We're going to get going and get all this gone through because there's a lot to discuss today. A lot to discuss. So let me play this intro right quick and then we will get going. If I can find it. It keeps shifting on my thing. It's not really shifting. It's just me not remembering where I put it. All right, y'all. This is going to be kind of probably a little underwhelming, I would guess. It's not going to be super intense, but there's just a lot of information to go through. So I'm going to pull it up on the screen here. Give me 1 second. And then I got to let Keke in because he's already talking. Okay, this is the original. Okay, we'll start with the original. We'll start with the original one. Hold on just a moment. We got to let in our buddy here. Come on, buddy. Our co-host for the day. Okay, so what we're going to do today is we are going to go through the counterclaim that was filed in regards to this first lawsuit. Let me pull this up so you guys can see this one again. Keke. Hi, Keke. Keke. Keke out here putting his butt in the camera. Keke's like, I got this, Mom. I'm right here, ready to go. All right. Let me make sure you guys can see it. Okay. Hey, everybody. Hold on. Let me go back up here. Sorry, guys. Cat butt in the camera. He always starts off this way. Hey, Am. Hey, Peas. Hey, Donna. Y'all, I've been enjoying myself. Hey, Marcy. Hey, Cool Gamer. Kay. Lorraine. By the way, for those of you that don't know, I did post the Google Drives in my members. So members have access. I paid for the documents. There's no need for you guys to pay for them again. So they are up and you shouldn't have to verify anything to be able to access those. They're public links for all the documents. There is a bunch more filings that I have. There's so many filings, but those are the main lawsuits. So I posted those for members. So if you're a member, you have access to those. That shouldn't make you verify anything. It's all right there. So you can follow along if you want to. This is going to be in regards to the lawsuit that was filed against, here, let me just pull it up. This is the counterclaim was what we're going to go through today, but this is the original here. This was the couple that filed suit against Timothy Ballard, Operation Underground Railroad, the Spear Fund, Rockwell Group, and Light and Liberty. So this was the original lawsuit that was filed. This was done back October. So we have kind of a lot has happened since then. As you guys know, there's been a lot of stuff. There's, as of end of December, beginning of January, there has been nonstop filings in this. It's been crazy. Oh, unsupervised. This is a huge rabbit hole that's going to be ongoing for quite some time. It is a massive rabbit hole, and there's a lot of players involved. So I'm going to go through right quick. Hey, sorry, language of horses. I just saw you come in too. I'm going to quickly remind you guys, and we're going to quickly look at this original filing before I pull up the counterclaim. So again, we saw yesterday when I did the Sean Reyes update, what they're attempting to do and why they're saying they're trying to privatize a bunch of the docks and stuff. We can go into that too on the court site if you guys want to. But this was the original that was filed. This is the couple that filed against Timothy Ballard, which we do know who one of them is now. Of course, they used different initials, but it has been released publicly who was behind this lawsuit. And you'll see that in the counterclaim, they address her by name. So originally when this was filed, again, this is a civil suit. This is not a criminal suit at this point in time. There has been civil or criminal complaints filed in 5 different jurisdictions against Timothy Ballard for alleged sexual assault on his ex-personal assistant. But this was filed previous to that. I think the Linden criminal complaint was filed right in tandem with the civil suit, but the ones in California were just recently filed. Okay, so we've been through all of this. If you want to see this detailed and everything, all of the statements and everything, it is on my page already. We read through the entire thing. I'm just going to kind of quickly go through here. So if you guys want to pause and look at it yourself, it's available. Like I said, though, my members, if you are a member on any tier in my membership, you have access to these documents. I put them up and you can look at them and follow along through with us. So I've already paid for every bit of it. So we're just going to go down here. I want to get to their statements right quick because I want to show you, I want to remind people what they said and then what was actually stated. Okay, here we go. Come on. My computer's being slow. Sorry, guys. Give me 1 second. These documents like this are always a little iffy. All right. So the initial lawsuit is up there. The statements start on page 33. Statement of AA. I'm going to quickly read through these. They are kind of lengthy, but just to give a baseline before we get into the counterclaim, because I think it's important to refresh people of what was initially claimed in the civil suit and then follow up with the counterclaim because we've seen so much change over time. All right, here we go. Statement of AA. Tim first approached me when I was working late in the office in October 2022. I was getting ready to leave the office at 7 p.m. He was there. He told me he was there to film. Later, I found out he was meeting a woman named Lori who also does readings. Tim often calls Lori the psychic for advice on many things, i.e. operations, lawsuits, and daily Tim crises. Interjection right quick. This is me interjecting. But y'all, buckle up because I've been in the Janet Roussan rabbit hole. And let me just say, there's a lot to unfold there too. So Miss Janet will be getting some attention by herself too, because it's very necessary. And she's been a part of OUR in many capacities. And she's also a big member of the board of the Children Need Families, which we have a lot of questions about where those kids ever were placed. Were they legal adoptions that Tim's wife had a lot to do with? She was a member on that board too. So Miss Janet and I will be becoming acquainted. Well, basically, Becky will be diving into everything we can find on her because there's a lot that isn't adding up. Okay, anyways, back to this. Tim walked into the office of my boss at the time, redacted office, and shut the door. It was just me and him. He asked me if I was ever interested in doing operations. I said, no way. I was working towards being in aftercare. At this time, I was an employee of OUR. I laughed, saying, I don't picture myself breaking down doors in combat boots, as that's the impression I always had with operations. They touted themselves as a paramilitary group, which we now know there was very few, except one female operator and maybe a handful of ex-veterans that ever had anything to do with OUR. They were not this paramilitary organization like they tried to market themselves as. And you'll have to excuse me. I will be drinking my hydration drinks. Me and the sinus infection are still fighting. So deal with it. Sorry. He told me that operations were not all just that there were a lot of female operators, and some of the best operators were female operators. He elaborated and said he was in the middle of an operation and needed help and thought I could help. I didn't talk much, as this was the first one-on-one conversation I had ever had with Tim. And I thought it came out of nowhere. So I was trying to wrap my head around what he was asking and make sense of it. He said there is a case he hopes I could help with in London. When the operation started, the female operator he used couldn't take any more time off work, and he needed a female partner. He explained that the female partner is there to pose as a girlfriend when they are having conversations at a party. He explained that this operation involved his team encountering a trafficked female, and he needed more information from her. To do that, his ops team was required to fly to London. Tim needed a girlfriend present. This new role would be there to befriend the trafficked girl during the party while they were tried to get information they needed from her. He said that every detail counts, even as small as him returning with a girlfriend. He told me he kept asking God, who should I bring? Cue in the emotional manipulation and religious manipulation. He told me he kept asking God, who should I bring in? Who should I bring? I need someone who can pull this off. He said he was driving down the road and saw my face, which was crazy because he doesn't even know my name. Then he apologized for not knowing my name. Dimitri, his bodyguard, opened the door, cluing Tim in to get on with it so that he could move along. Tim asked for my number, and then I went home. The following day, Tim called me and asked if I could fly to San Clemente, California for an ops training. It was the same time that the board meeting was happening. I told him yes. He told me repeatedly that all this needed to be a secret, and it's essential that ops was on the down low. I didn't find that weird, as no one at OUR talked about operations. It was all very secretive. When I got back to California, Dimitri picked me up. Dimitri and I got some lunch, and he checked me into the hotel I was staying in. I remember Dimitri asked, so why did Tim fly you out here? I told him, honestly, I didn't know how to answer that. Tim told me not to tell anyone or anything. So a few things were going through my mind already. Number one, is this a test? Number two, am I in trouble for flying to California since I am still so confused about what Tim was asking me to do? And number three, why is Dimitri asking me? Shouldn't he know? Looking back, I can tell now that Dimitri's response was clear that he was annoyed that I was there. He was annoyed that Tim was up to something. Dimitri called me when Dimitri and I were getting lunch. There was music in the background, and Tim got mad. Where are you? Why are you not at the hotel? I told him we were finishing lunch and then checked into my hotel. At this time, it was about 2 p.m. Tim told me he would come to my hotel soon. I didn't ask questions. I just said, okay. It was approximately 6 p.m. when Tim got to my hotel room. I remember feeling very uncomfortable in the hotel room alone with another man and afraid and shy to say anything. I also thought, this is Tim Ballard. I should feel differently. He was explaining roles and operations. I go by Brian Black when I'm in the role. I will be Brian Black. He started to explain what the couple's ruse is. 2 operators can block each other in strip clubs or massage parlors. It will cover any suspicion of the operators being the good guys. He gave an example. If in a strip club, the stripper wants to sit on his lap, his girlfriend can block that from happening by sitting on his lap. Another example was, while getting information in massage spas, while getting couples massages, trying to get information, if the traffickers tried doing anything to either one of the operators, the safe word is, fuck me. And that is the clue to get your partner help in being sexually harassed by saying, get out. We want to be alone now. Traffickers can smell pheromones, so we must have real chemistry during the couple's ruse or traffickers will call us out. Tim said he had rules that there is no kissing or touching private parts if he ever does a couple's ruse with anyone. I remember saying, is HR going to pop out of the closet during this whole conversation, because he didn't say any of this to me before I got to California. And I couldn't believe I was hearing what I was hearing. Remember back to the interview that we just watched the other day? We watched the interview and it was asked, did he act differently in California than he did in Utah? I think we're going to see some of that. Hey, Marcy, Tracy, Lorraine, CCK. I don't know if I said hi to all you guys, but thanks for joining me today. Okay. Now you're going to remember this part too that got mentioned in the interview and there was questions asked, and you'll see why once we get to the counterclaim. The role he asked me to play still needed to be clarified. I was led to believe I was helping with a case in London, but not in the context of a couple's ruse in that way. That differs from how it was explained to me in Utah at the office. Essentially, Tim wanted me to befriend a girl they were trying to save in London that they had already found and believed she was trafficked out of North Korea. Tim continued to talk about chakras and tantric massages. It was all very confusing, but I just wanted to help however I could. When he left, he hugged me and lifted my shirt to look at my stomach. He said he had no idea I had such a hot body because I was always so covered at the office. My back was facing the bed, and it was easy to fall back on. He pulled me in tighter and kissed my neck. He said that kissing my neck up and down would avoid kissing lips. He had me lay on my back on the bed to show me how to fake fuck while both of our clothes were on. One of the positions he showed me was he wrapped one of my legs over his neck and began to thrust, explaining it would show as if his dick was sliding in me, but going under me without actually going in. He told me another female partner came up with this technique and it works all the time. They were able to save hundreds of kids this way. It was so uncomfortable, but I dismissed it because it was Tim Ballard. And what did I know after all? He was the operator. I was someone he was told could help break these huge trafficking ring coming out of North Korea. Tim then left and said he and an operator would return later. He came back a few hours later, but was alone. He told me an operator would follow us in a different car and I wouldn't see them. It was all part of the training. He said they would text him throughout the night and give us tasks. We would need to do them. This shows if I can pass the tasks assigned. We first went to dinner and he said he got a text. He got a text that said we needed to get in the hot tub. I told him that was dumb. We were at the Four Seasons in California and people may recognize him. I did not want to do it, but I did anyways. When I was in the hot tub, he took his shirt and garment shirt off and mentioned he sees angels all around and that this isn't wrong. Afterward, he took me back to the hotel and I went to bed. He returned to his uncle's house where he was staying. Tim instructed me to keep this information, tactics, or events private from anyone else. The next day, he was in board meetings most of the day. I was doing strength training with Matt Cooper, which consisted of nothing unusual, just workouts on the beach. We ate dinner at Tim's uncle's house that night. I went back to the hotel room alone, then flew home the following day. I'm not aware if anyone else at OUR knew that I was there that weekend or ever knew I was an operator except for Redacted, the CEO at the time. Brad was fired only a short time after I started doing operations. Blank texted me one afternoon to check up on me. Tim always wanted me to tell him whoever was talking to me about operations, so I let him know Brad checked in on me. Tim later told me he called Brad and yelled at him for going around Tim's back. Brad is the CEO, and it can be intimidating for me to get a call from him. That was weird. But again, I ignored it. But ultimately, I was embarrassed. My operations were and always have been a secret. I was led to believe this because operations is confidential. I don't think my boss, Redacted CFO, COO, knew I was going on operations. I was not allowed to discuss it with him or tell him. This made my job very difficult. I was in all day-to-day business operations and projects, then at night and weekends. Tim had me doing all the Tim Ballard brand and traveling abroad for operations. I didn't get any additional pay. I did not expect or ask, as that was not where my heart was. But I felt Tim was putting me in unfair situations and I couldn't voice it because he was the founder of OUR and must have good intentions. One day you will make lots of money, he would always say if I would start to bring up any compensation relief, which was never my goal to do. Oh, this is just a stark reminder of how ridiculous this is. Like hearing what she had to write. I wanted to lay this out though, because I think it's important to hear her statement. We've seen her in her interviews before we get into the counterclaim, because what they're attempting to do with this counterclaim is even more disturbing. So what Tim did and how he manipulated this victim, in my opinion, is absolutely horrendous. And we are not questioning her story. I just wanted to lay this out and show you guys had been said previously before we get into the counterclaim, because it's really heavy. It's just an utter slap in the face. Hey, Cheese. Hope you guys are all having a good day. Hey, Stonefly. All right, continuing on, back to the lawsuit. It was making things difficult for me at home. I was away from home more and more, with no extra pay or real reasons to explain to my husband, FT, that no position title change made sense on why I was doing what I was doing or salary change, which logically makes sense elsewhere. Simple questions can be answered like, am I covered insurance wise if I'm on an op? You would think that that would be something they would have had figured out, right? Because she wasn't his first female operator. I don't know. Tim had me spying on everything in the office for him. Remember what we read in the article about she shouldn't have had access to XYZ and they were stolen documents? Well, here's her statement. Tim had me spying on everything in the office for him, which made it weird for me relationally, as I was close to everyone. As I said, I was in everyday business operations for 6 months before Tim. There was always something or someone doing wrong to Tim in Tim's eyes. So he wanted to keep me in everything and report back to him, and it burnt me out. The first practice op in Guayaquil. This took place in Guayaquil. Tim was accepting an award, so he thought we could do a practice operation there to make sure I was prepared to go to London and not screw up. We got checked into the hotel, and he said they ordered a massage to come to the room for a couple's massage. I kept telling him I was so nervous. How does this go? What should I do? What should I say? Who is it? His response was to go with it. There was a knock on the door. Tim opened the door. The 2 girls were there to give us a couple's massage. I looked at Tim. He got completely naked and lay on the bed, stomach down. I was wearing black shorts and a blue top. I lay on the bed, belly down, with my clothes on. My face was towards his, and he said, "Why didn't you take your clothes off?" I said, "I didn't know I was supposed to." So I sat up and took my shirt off. I laid back down, and the girls gave us a massage. Hold on, you guys. I'm going to switch out my banner here. Heavy trigger warning on this. This details quite extensive stuff. So just, if this is too much for you to listen to, I completely understand. But the victims' voices deserve to be heard. They've been smeared. They are being made into complete and utter fools by Tim Ballard and his cult, and it's ridiculous. And their voices deserve to be heard. Hey, Mama Bear. Okay. So heavy trigger warning. This is very raw content. I don't speak Spanish, but Tim does. They were all giggling. I asked him what they were saying, so it looked like I wanted to be there. Tim turned me on my side and said he was complimenting me on how hot my girlfriend's body is. He would translate what they said to me. He told me he was asking them how much they masturbate and asked how they masturbate. One of the girls wanted to show him how they masturbate on me. I remember giggling to play the part, and Tim rolled me on my back. I remember closing my eyes, wanting it to be over. I didn't remember the safe word then. I was only remembering that I wanted it to be over. I heard Tim say he had never seen this done so close, and he was getting a lesson. I felt fingers inside me. When I comprehended that, I stood up and went to the bathroom. I heard the girls leaving. I got in the shower and cried. Tim came into the bathroom. It was a glass door, and I turned around because I didn't want him to see me or see me cry. But he said, "You did so good. You are such a badass. No female operator did as good as that. We are going to save so many kids," he said. He said he got a name from them that will provide kids, and that I should not be sad or feel guilty about anything, because we would not have gotten that trafficker's name if I didn't do any of that. Okay, this is my interjection. This is not in there. But in my opinion, he basically had a complete stranger, a massage person, sexually assault this woman on his behalf. And now he's saying, "Oh, we're going to save so many kids." The level of disgustingness with this person. And yes, this is all alleged at this point in time, but these are my opinions on what we have seen for months on end and watched and listened to. And I believe the victims. Sorry, that's the way it is. And I've seen so much that details what Tim Ballard has done to so many people that, yeah, anyways, back to this. None of it made sense. I remember feeling so disgusted with myself and shoving all of it away because I just wanted to help. And I thought, this is how operations work. I told him I would be out soon, so he left. I got out of the shower, dressed, cut his hair, and got ready for the night. We all went to the award ceremony, got on a plane, and flew home. Nothing came of the practice operation. I never heard of checking back in with the trafficker's name that they said they got that night. Practice op in Mexico. Tim had CPAC in Mexico. I went with Tim, Dimitri, Matt Cooper to have another practice leading up to London. Mind you, in between these practice operations, the text messages and constant reminders of how important it is to keep everything a secret were a continual reminder everything was for the greater good, the new covenant. Religious manipulation again, in my opinion. We got to Mexico City and we had a 3-bedroom Airbnb. Me, Coop, and Tim stayed there. They ordered 2 escorts. They told me they heard that one of them knew traffickers. I wasn't sure how the night would go. There was never a real plan. I always asked, and he said it was impossible with operations. We had a goal, but besides that, we just got to improvise. I found comfort in not speaking Spanish. It took the pressure off slightly. The 2 escorts came over. I stayed in my room for a few minutes. Tim showed me off as his girlfriend when I walked into the living room. The party continued. There was alcohol and just conversation going. I was asking Tim to ask them questions for me. What do they do for work? What is it like being an escort? How much money do they get paid? Tim told them I was interested in being an escort, but I elaborated in letting them know that I didn't know how to do that sort of thing. I was using that as a defense and getting out of what I felt was coming, which was Tim wanting to be alone with Julie in the back bedroom. My saying I don't know how to do that work got me in a worse position. Tim said, let's have blank teach you. I didn't have a choice. We all walked to the back bedroom. Tim lay on the bed and Julie got completely naked and crawled on Tim. She was talking to Tim, telling him how to tell me guys like this, guys like that. I kept my clothes on and sat on the bed. She asked him why I was so shy and still had all my clothes on. Tim asked, and I said to tell her because I don't know how to do any of this, remember? The other escort came into the bedroom and allowed us to break up the sex escort training session. When Blank left, Tim asked her about the kids and traffickers they knew. Blank elaborated and said she could help get us information. She wanted to return the following night, but hang out with me. Second night with Julie in Mexico. That night, it was just me and Blank. I elaborated on the character as the girlfriend wanting to become an escort, just asking her questions, becoming friends, but ultimately seeing if I could get any information about the traffickers she allegedly knew. As I talked to her, I told her I owed Brian, Tim, a lot of money, so I needed to become an escort like her. How do I do it? She told me that I needed to get in these groups, and to do that, I needed to provide boudoir photos. She also said that she could provide kids sold in these groups on WhatsApp. I could get in these groups and meet the traffickers if I provided boudoir photos, pictures of myself. Tim was all for the pictures being done. I got the pictures of myself and sent them to Julie. Julie sent them to her WhatsApp group. London op. By the time London was here, Tim had me looking online at escorts anywhere we went, wanting me to order them for the night in hopes we could get any information on trafficked kids. He was convinced the new way of finding trafficked kids was through escorts. Tim had me make my profile pages with escort agency ads and my boudoir photos. He had me book escorts for every night we were in London. 2 escorts came one night, and he told me to wait down at the bar for 20 minutes. When I got upstairs, they had just gotten out of the shower. The girls were surprised that I came, so they left. I was relieved. The next night, another escort came. He told me to wait downstairs at the bar for 20 minutes. I was downstairs with Coop and told him I didn't feel that this was right. I don't know much about operations, but why must he be alone with the escorts? I walked upstairs. Tim was in a robe on the bed with the escort. I walked over to the escort and started talking to her like she was a friend, which ultimately killed the mood. I befriended her, as that was my role for the London op anyways. So I felt good enough to do that instead of engaging in anything sexually. And I did not have anything in me. The real op in London. We had one big suite in the hotel rooms. The big suite is where the party is going to take place. The objective of this operation was to get additional information from this girl to confirm she is currently being trafficked. To do that, we also needed to order her through her agency. So we did that. And then she met Coop at his hotel room. Tim and I came in. I was introduced to as his girlfriend. He talked about chakras and tantric massages. He was explaining where the chakras were. He had me straddle his lap. Oops. Come back down here. He had me straddle his lap, and he was demonstrating where each chakra was on me. Then he said we were going to take a shower. It was almost a production. We walked into the bathroom. He turned the shower on and made sex noises to make the individual think we were having sex in the shower. We got out and walked upstairs to the party to get the needed information. Once the night was over, we were happy she provided the information, but there has always been one major factor that never made sense to me. Why did I need all these practice ops, including things that didn't come close to what he had me do before London, for London to be a success? Everybody doing okay still? This is a lot. Yeah. And I know that's what I was, when we were looking at that yesterday, I swear the more and more I read through this and the more in depth I think about some of these situations, even going back to that Columbia raid and all of the things that were set up there, in my opinion, they were definitely creating supply and demand. All right, continuing on with this. I hope you guys are all doing okay. I know this is a really hard subject to, hey T, I know this is a really hard subject to get into, but this needs to be highlighted. So I'm going to finish this and then we're going to hop to the counterclaim and then we will come back and read the husband's statement. Hey, meet me on the blacktop. Oh my gosh, that's an old CMC name. That's somebody from Facebook for sure. Because that's an old CMC saying, meet me on the blacktop. Welcome in. I like the name. Okay, Mexico City, Julie Op. After London, blank wants me to meet up with us because she has information. The operation started terribly from the beginning. We missed our flights and our luggage was rerouted to another state. We arrived in Mexico City late at night, but still met Julie and two of her Ukrainian escort friends. Blank was the case we had been working on for a few months. The point of this meeting was to get more info from Blank because she kept saying she had no friends who were selling kids. She had friends, excuse me. Let me reread that. The point of this meeting was to get more info from Blank because she kept saying she had friends who were selling kids in escort group chats on WhatsApp. Tim wanted Blank and I to bring Ukraine escorts because he was working on a case from Ukraine. Before they left, Tim told them to come back the following night, which led to having to get more money for their time. Side note, that's interesting to think about that again, too, because in one of the podcasts he did to cover his save face, in my opinion, after all of this started coming out, they talked about how his wife wanted him to go to Ukraine to rescue these children after the war had broke out. I wonder if they brought any Ukrainian kids over. There's so many questions I have about all of this. Anyways, back to the document. The following morning, we met with a public official. I left the meeting early to see if our bags were back at the hotel and to withdraw more pesos to pay for Blank and the two Russian girls while Tim and Matt Osborne stayed at the meeting. When Tim and Matt were on their way to the hotel we were staying at, I told them I would be late due to traffic. I was already texting Blank, letting her know to go to the bar to buy some time so Tim and Matt didn't need to be alone with them in the room. I was under the impression that any op would start once all the pieces were in place. When I got to the hotel, the girls, Tim and Matt Osborne, had already been in the hotel room. Tim and Blank were on their way down alone to the hot tub. The three of us crossed paths as I was getting off the elevator. They were getting on the elevator to go down to the hot tub. I was taken aback by the situation they created for the whole day, and I was disgusted. I remember testing Tim with the statement, "I will come," and he said it was just them two going. I share this because it debunks the couple's ruse. Tim and Blank would be in the hot tub alone. Matt Osborne was alone in a hotel room with two other girls when I was supposed to be their blocker. This was more of a get together, as me and Julie had essentially already developed a friendship over the past months. Still, I thought I shouldn't voice this with the bit of experience I have in operations. We had two rooms and one suite where we all were meeting. One regular room right next door. Matt Osborne was in the suite with the other two girls, and I was too upset to go in there for various reasons. She lists the reasons. I had been alone in Mexico City trying to get pesos out for Tim. We met with a potential trafficker the night before in the hotel we were staying at. The op started without all the things in place, as discussed. All my personal information was being exposed via the front desk. Therefore, the TV was on when I entered the room because they were ordering room service and playing music. My actual name was on the TV, not my undercover name. These women came over with the impression that they were being paid for sex, but I believed we were paying them for information. I believed we had a plan in place so sex wouldn't be involved. Tim going off alone with one escort was so unnecessary. That debunked the couple's ruse. After seeing Tim go to the hot tub with the escort alone, I walked into the regular hotel room to regroup. I texted Matt Osborne to let him know I was back, and he asked me to give him 5 more minutes. I thought that was strange. I chose to dismiss, thinking he was just in conversation getting information. When 5 minutes was up, I knocked on the door. Matt had makeup on his face, leading me to believe he was kissing one of the girls. Shortly after I arrived in the room, Matt got a text from Tim. Tim asked if we could all leave the room because he and Blank were on their way up from the hot tub and needed a little longer with her. So Matt and the two girls and I went to the restaurant downstairs. It was approximately 30 minutes, and then Tim texted Matt and said they were done and we could come up. We all got upstairs. Tim had a robe on. The shower glass door had water on them, and her bathing suit was on the floor by the window. Matt Osborne left almost right away. I talked with the girls for about 10 minutes, and they all left. Tim told me immediately that he found himself in a tricky spot. I remember listening with disgust. Then he said she wanted to have sex with him so bad, and when she went to get the condom, he hurried and masturbated. So by the time she either turned around or walked back, he was able to tell her he couldn't have sex anymore. He told her, "You're just so hot. I had to do this instead. I'm sorry," he said. In doing all that, he said he got information that she wanted to meet up and play at Del Carmen, where her friend was selling kids. I didn't respond to him on any of this. I remember being unable to say anything. After a couple of awkward seconds of silence, he got an ignorant and rude attitude. I remember he said to the effect that I should be grateful because he just had to sacrifice needing to do something like that to get information from Julie. I also remember feeling bad because we were there and the plan was to try and get information from her differently. I didn't deliver though, so I was grateful he got and saved kids now. He then elaborated on how much he lost and sacrificed, and I now remember feeling bad for accusing him of doing something wrong or judging him, leading me to ignore and forget this happened until now. In January, I told Tim he needed a team of people to rally around him to help with how busy his life is. He needs more employees. I suggested 2 individuals that I already knew from the office. These individuals had been with OUR since the beginning, and I thought he could trust them no matter what. He created a department called the Founders Group. They had kickoff meetings at our Miami office over the weekend in January. When he returned, he told me he would take one of the individuals on the upcoming operation. I told him I did not think that was a good idea, but Tim knows best. He works off instinct, and that was that. The operation he was taking her on was a takedown of a 3-year process finally ending. It was so strange, taking someone on there at such a high risk with the potential of compromising and losing any of it. I was going to Mexico 2 days earlier to finish the blank operation with 2 other operators. I was going to see Tim and this other individual for just 1 day before I went home, and they went on to start their operation. Tim and this individual arrived at the safe house alone, which implied they traveled alone to Playa del Carmen, where we were all staying. I was checking in with Tim's new female partner, and she seemed good. Tim did the final meeting with Julie and me, and nothing came of this. Fast forward to mid-March. Tim, myself, and the OUR development team were in Miami for a speaking fundraising event and gala. Tim always liked filling the time when we were traveling, so we pulled a list of escorts near the area, and he wanted to do some bodyguard tactics. There were 2 other operators as well to help with this operation and accompanied Tim's security. We rented a 3-bedroom condo and 1 other condo in the same building. Right before the speaking event, Tim got a call informing him that his lawyer, Brent Anderson, was flying into Miami to inform him that the individual he brought to Mexico in February had filed a complaint. He wanted to be with him personally to tell him the news. Tim was so upset, dry heaving and throwing up. He gathered himself up enough to speak at the event and return to the condo. By that time, Brent was there. The 3 of us talked briefly. Tim was very detailed about what had happened that whole week with him and that other individual. He claimed his innocence and nothing had happened. Then Tim brought Blank, an operator, and Tim's security for the weekend to speak on how operations work. Tim told me not to have Blank come to the condo until he told me to. He was always particular with details. I never knew why Blank was not able to be there when Brent arrived. Brent put Tim's mind at ease, letting him know that they would do an investigation so that they were covered if anything came back in the future. They could say they performed an investigation and Tim was innocent, which makes sense. Once we got back to Utah, all of my updates on the investigation came from Tim. I was working from the Linden office and traveling a lot. I never saw anyone from the main office. Tim kept asking me to write a complaint letter to OUR regarding sexual harassment and harassment against OUR because the individual lied about me when this happened. Earlier, she had told me that people in the office were uncomfortable with me being an employee, but later recanted and told the investigators that that was untrue. This allowed Tim to tell me that this individual is jealous of me being a fellow employee, leaving it accessible for him to cause tension and mistrust between me and this individual, which we've seen more and more of. That seems very likely that he did. He played the operators, the females, against each other, so they all had some animosity or disdain, in my opinion, for one another. Sorry, guys, this is a lot of reading. I never wrote a complaint to OUR or told Tim I didn't. I talked to HR one time. The conversation consisted of me expressing confusion with the whole situation. I couldn't wait for it to all be over, but that was it. Again, these people were my friends. Tim told me he repeatedly would ask Catherine to write a complaint to OUR. He told me she didn't want to. He called me one day from his car. He was reading her complaint to me out loud, but I could tell he was erasing and editing sentences as if he was reading it out loud. I told him he should not turn it in. And then I got off the phone. That was none of my business. Tim had me out of the main office when the investigation started, and I was not talking to anyone except him. Tim painted the narrative for me and even resigned for me. He isolated me, making sure I had no access to any information. He told me what to say. I remember answering questions, but still leaving things out. I remember now. He coached me on all the things he wanted me to say. He convinced me that the individual was lying. He went as far as saying this individual was obsessed with him. She wanted to marry him, to be his wife when he was the president of the United States, and physically hurt Catherine. He told me she was trying to put cookies on his doorstep to poison Catherine. He painted her out to be this crazy person who became obsessed with him during an operation, and he couldn't escape her. He said all they did was hold hands. I knew if I elaborated on anything in my interview, it could ruin OUR. All operations would stop and no kids would be saved. It came time for my interview with the investigator in charge of the case. That day, Tim called me all day. He wanted to meet before to ensure I was prepped. I never did. He was constantly repeating, no drinking on ops, no kissing or touching private parts, over and over and over. I remember telling him I didn't need coaching, as I would say. I stuck to the narrative that Tim painted for me. February 2023. By this time, I am an undercover operator and employee. I understood that my boss, Blank, and HR finally knew I was doing ops. OUR and Tim thought it would make sense to move me to be the only one with Tim since I do operations and have been doing tasks already for Tim. I was hesitant but hopeful for a simpler schedule and better work-life balance, which had greatly affected my marriage and home life. Between travel and being at Tim's Linden's office, I was not at the main office that much. Tim was sorting out issues between himself and OUR. I was getting all my updates through Tim and no one else. I slowly lost all contact with everyone at OUR as I was just so busy with everything Tim. Koreatown, California, December to July of 2023. Tim said he was getting intel from spas coming out of Koreatown, so we made a couple of trips there and visited some spas to see if there was anything we would come across. We walked into the spa and asked for a couple's massage. They didn't do them, so he ordered one for me. Tim said he would wait for me in the waiting area. The spa was tiny, 3 rooms in the waiting room. It was all close enough to where I could hear everything happening. I went into the room, undressed, got under the covers, and lay on my stomach. The girl came in to massage me. I could hear Tim talking to the other girls at the front desk, which kept me at ease. I asked the girl a couple of questions, but half through the massage, Tim was gone. Another worker came in and told the current girl to leave. She told me to turn over so she could massage my feet. A few minutes into the foot massage, I glanced down because I saw the light. I caught the girl recording pictures or video right up the sheet as she gave me a foot massage. I noticed the door was open 3 inches. So when I went to move and ask what was happening, the manager walked in and started cleaning up to distract everything. I didn't dare stick up for myself when I caught the girl recording or taking pictures of me because I was left alone in the spa with 3 of the potential traffickers, and I was supposed to act like I would like that, but I didn't have a way out of there since I didn't have my blocker. I got dressed and sat there in the waiting area for another 10 minutes while Tim returned to pick me up. I asked him where he went. I was upset because he was never supposed to leave me alone, and he told me he went to find more spas. February 2023 to June 2023. I moved over to being all things Tim Ballard, employee and operator. He would constantly tell me I was the best operator. No one had done ops like me before. We were going to save so many kids. He had never trusted anyone as much as he trusted me, and everyone had betrayed him. He said he would put a bullet in his brain if I ever brought up the need to move positions. I handled all personal Tim Ballard brand and operations. I was preparing for the Sound of Freedom tour and speaking gigs. Tim was also trying to implement Operation Bodyguard, which consisted of couples or 2 operators going undercover anywhere, spas, clubs, ordering escorts to rooms, and trying to get intel from them. He was convinced that escorts were the way to get all of the information on human trafficking and that the couples' roost would thrive through Operation Bodyguard. He was planning the initial training in the Dominican Republic and had me reaching out to couples of his choice to coordinate a time to get there. This never happened. June 2023 to September 2023. Tim was telling people he resigned from OUR because there would be a conflict with the Sound of Freedom and that he wanted to start the Spear Fund. I always felt weird about that because I was with him on June 9th when he got his termination letter from OUR's board members and OUR. He never gave me clear information. He kept me so busy with tasks and just consoling him daily that I didn't even have the mental capacity to think about getting logical answers to anything I asked. Suppose I did ask a question that deserved a logical explanation. Tim always responded with a crisis he was dealing with. So the subject would be different. And we would be talking about him again, fixing anything he needed or complimenting him, telling him it's all going to be okay. I would then feel bad for whatever he was going through and for asking such questions. I personally never had a conversation with OUR about resigning myself. Tim did it all for me. I was under the impression that I was only leaving for work with Tim. I was told OUR was giving Tim Spear Fund a year's grant to cover my salary. Tim or Spear Fund has not paid me. I have not received any salary while working with Tim or the Spear Fund, only partial reimbursements. Y'all doing okay over there? Oh, what in the hell is going on here? Who is this? Again? What? You guys probably already got him, but what in the hell is these stinking weird rapper accounts again? Yeah, right, Blue Ridge? Yeah, absolutely. Rapper, what are you doing? Seriously. Sorry, guys. I just paid attention. I'm sure the mods got it. Like, I don't even understand what is happening here. Thank you, guys. I figured you did. Yeah, I'm seeing that. Hey, Smiles. Hey, everybody coming in. Okay, back to this. We're almost done with this part of it, and then we will go on to. This makes me wonder about his history before all this. He was so bold. His confidence and manipulation just didn't grow out of thin air. Mimi on the blacktop. I would really love to see somebody deep dive into his past history, like actual, like what he was like as a child. I know he was raised in California. He had multiple siblings. He was raised in the LDS faith. Then he went to BYU, and then he put on this whole rapper. Are you freaking joking today? Sorry about this, you guys. Please ignore this person in the comment section. I do not co-sign or anything. This is absolutely disgusting what this person is like. Whoever it is needs some severe help. But I would really be interested to know, because it sounds like he's lied so many times or told mistruths or twists to the story about when he worked for the CIA, that I would be really interested to see what his history was like. Did he have previous girlfriends? I know him and Catherine got married really young. They have, altogether they have 9 children. There's just a lot that's really questionable. I would be interested in the same thing. Hey, Susan, good to see you. Hey, Sheila. Okay, back to this. When I got a separation and a release agreement, the wording needed to be more apparent because nothing was adding up. After all, I thought I was only resigning and not being terminated. My husband was the one who brought this to my attention when he read the fine print. There were things in there mentioning I was not rehirable. Why is that? I asked him and he didn't get clear answers. Imagine that. I don't believe I was given a fair chance of leaving OUR in a friendly manner. I never knew Tim's narrative, as I could not be involved in any conversations. I have been violated and taken advantage of while working in day-to-day business operations tasks at OUR, ops, and an employee, all while being asked to keep it a secret from everyone I know. Never mention it to anyone. No one understands. This is for the greater good, the new covenant. We had to be married in past lives, he would say. Oh, all that emotional and religious manipulation again. I resigned from OUR under a narrative that I had no control over. Tim kept me so busy and isolated from other operators that I never had the chance to understand true operations and all the right protocols. I was never able to have any communication with them once I left the Spear Fund to understand the full scope of what was going on. OUR knew the total capacity of what I was being exposed to and did not care to reach out to me in any way this whole time. Instead, they did the opposite, keeping me in operations and putting me in the role of being more available to Tim Ballard. I believe Tim had me join the Spear Fund as a cover to protect himself from these other women he knows he violated for his gain. Tim had a habit of asking me to cover for him on many things. One in particular was asking me to take blame for dirty text messages he said was a tactic that we used in operations on our burner phones. He was always so worried that they would leak out. Over the past year, I have distanced myself from all of my friends and family, thinking it was because I was so busy with work. Still, it was because I couldn't relate to anyone in normal conversation with all the things Tim was having me do, that this was in the name of God through revelation and saving children. This happened through Tim's mind games and manipulation, guilt trips, and last-minute crises, especially when I would speak my mind. I felt I needed to clean up all of Tim's crises that he would throw at me even when it would supersede my family and personal life. Working for Tim has cost me relationships, my marriage relationship, and time away from my family for 1 year. I have burned bridges for this man without knowing it. I've gone into debt for him, and when I would bring it up, it always would come back to a personal crisis Tim was going through. I would feel guilty for asking for a paycheck I never received since June, or for covering his expenses this year. Since I resigned, I have been able to breathe and realize this was all mind games and manipulation for his personal gain that I will never understand. She lists Tim's reoccurring comments to me. Traffickers can smell pheromones. We are doing this for the greater good. This is all for the new covenant. I see angels all around. Catherine chose you. These aren't our real bodies. Jesus gave us our bodies to use like this, referring to the couple's ruse. Our bodies are a tool. I would do anything to save a child. How far would you go? Janet and Lori said you would never turn on me. You are the only one who could ruin me. I want to put I wanted to put a bullet in my brain before you. I will put a bullet in my brain if you ever leave me. Constantly said that. All right. Now we are going to hop over to this one. This is the one we're going to switch to now. Okay, so that is a reminder of the initial claims that were sent. It seems I upset the cult. Yeah, potentially just immature ridiculousness. That's how they behave. We don't have time for that nonsense. So we are going to hop into the counterclaim now. Again, this is very triggering because they absolutely, so that was what was filed. That is just her statement. So we're clear. That was what was filed. And there's a second part to that too, which is the husband's statement. Again, members, you have access to these full documents if you want to follow along. They are in the member section. They are listed. We're going to hop to the counterclaim now so you guys can see what OUR is claiming currently about this victim. This is what is really important to me. So this is counterclaims by defendant, Operation Underground Railroad Incorporated. They named them here, fully named. Again, I would have went through and redacted this completely, yet they have been very public about all this information. There is nothing that is released in these that hasn't really been discussed publicly. Their names are all very public. They've been doing press conferences, all of the things. So please keep that in mind, as this is a very sensitive topic and it is very triggersome. And to re-victimize victims in this manner, in my opinion, is some of the lowest of the low. So it goes through, lists all the defendants per usual. It's got the counterclaimant, Operation Underground Railroad, a Utah nonprofit, Celeste Voorhees and Michael Voorhees. Defendant and counterclaimant, Operation Underground Railroad. Through undersigned counsel, hereby complain against plaintiffs and counter defendants, Celeste Voorhees and Michael Voorhees, as follows. I'm going to just probably give them nicknames. Ms. Voorhees, a former employee of OUR. Mr. Voorhees is Miss Voorhees' husband and is not, nor has ever been, an employee or operator of OUR, which we knew. Okay. OUR is a 501c3 nonprofit corporation. The Third Judicial District Court in and for Salt Lake County, Utah, has jurisdiction over the claims asserted below pursuant to the provision 78A-5-102 Utah Code, blah, blah, blah. We all know that. Number 5, venue is properly laid before the Third Judicial District Court in and for Salt Lake County. This is all the formalities of these. All right, factual allegations. OUR's mission and history as a preeminent, are you kidding me, anti-sex, slavery, and trafficking organization. I didn't even read that until now. Oh, here we go. Remember, this is OUR. Speaking for OUR, this is their response, not Ballard's. OUR's mission is to rescue children and others who are being victimized by sex trafficking and sexual exploitation. OUR staff, operators, and volunteers have been conducting anti-trafficking work since the organization's founding in 2013, thanks to the support of generous donors. This important work continues today. Since its inception, OUR assists law enforcement and partners with other entities, non-governmental organizations, to rescue victims. OUR also helps provide aftercare to those affected by human trafficking. Aftercare includes providing support for accommodation, transportation, education, medical care, and vocational training. All right, segue, stop, urge. Again, this is going to be my opinion interjected here, but where? OUR, where? I'm going to need to see proof that you've ever done anything to help rescue a child or a victim of trafficking, that you are responsible for, that you actually were the ones to do the full process. I'm also going to need to know where the aftercare is. There has been zero transparency on anything. You've made all sorts of egregious claims and numbers of all these people that you've saved, and there's been zero proof to back that up. Anybody that's worked closely with you has said quite the opposite, that there is no aftercare. Jessica Moss, whatever you want to call her, what does she do? She kind of sounds like Tim to me. A lot of talk, no action. They have provided zero transparency that any child has ever been rescued whatsoever. Pedro, hey, what's up, Pedro? By the way, I do get some funny trolls that come in here and do stuff like that. So those are okay trolls. The rapper guy, no. Yeah, what? Hey, Donna, this is just, where's the proof that, where? Okay, going on. This is going to be long because I have a lot of these. Number 9, to date, OUR has provided operational support in over 30 countries around the world. Each region has a regional director dedicated to that area with a highly specialized background of federal or state law enforcement, military, and or counter human trafficking work. Release the records. I'm going to need to see the records. How did you pick those 30 countries? Are they because they're the 30 countries that have corrupt governments that you guys could go in and underhandedly do these operations and nobody would be any of the wiser? That is a pretty bold claim that they made. Why are they selecting those 30 countries? I would love to know, wouldn't you? And they have never been transparent on any of the work that they do. And yes, I know that it's trafficking and there's things that have to be protected, but there is ways of being transparent within these that would completely keep everybody safe and yet show transparency. What I have seen OUR do, just my experience of what I've watched OUR do, is they take other victim stories that they have had nothing to do with them being rescued, no facilitation in their aftercare, nothing to do with it. They get their hands on that story. They throw some money at an agency or an organization that's associated with that victim. Then they either sometimes have acknowledgement of using the story and other times not. Yeah, Pedro, yeah. Pedro needs a sarcasm font for sure. And then they fundraise with those stories. We've looked at so many of them. And they have nothing to do with these stories. Look at the little girl that they used that was supposedly being mutilated. Oh, you guys, this is going to trigger me to no end. This shit triggers me so bad. And I'm sorry for everybody else. I am so sorry for trafficking victims and people who are survivors of horrific things such as this, that these people have completely degraded, in my opinion, by their bullshit. It just drives me insane. Today, OUR has provided operational. Okay, we read that. That's a bunch of bullshit. Number, in my opinion, 10, OUR currently supports on average more than 5 operations a week that can be categorized into the following activities: operational, logistics, cyber, capacity building, aftercare, and legal services, commissions. This important work includes a combination of boots on the ground, intelligence gathering, contributing hardware, training, specialized tools, and manpower to law enforcement worldwide. I'm going to call bullshit. That's my opinion. But they've never been able to prove any of that. They say they talk a good game, but they have never been able to break that up. Ever. They've never been able. I know, Cutie Pie. This gets me so heated. Yeah, thank you for saying that. We've talked a little bit about it, and I want to talk more about it when we get into your story too. The fact that OUR attempted to use Amethyst's story, there's a special type of hell that I hope they burn in for that. Like, I honestly, like, just watching how they do it. They connect with people that have been in horrific spots, have had horrific things happen to them, and they use it to fundraise. And then now they're claiming, this is in legal documents. Again, this is a civil suit, not a criminal suit, but this is a civil suit that they are making this claim. Then they should be able to provide. I can't wait for discovery. I cannot wait. Number 11, operational. Commissions include conducting surveillance, undercover work, and intel management. This work is done by trained operators. Oh, like trained operators that call up an escort and have, or a massage therapist and have the massage therapist sexually assault one of the operators. Special training like that. That's surveillance too, I'm assuming. Interesting. Logistics. Commissions include supporting law enforcement by providing hardware, software, trained canine resources, and covering travel and other expenses related to a specific mission. Kind of seems like they keep law enforcement at the top of their radar, trying to keep law enforcement in their back pocket. So law enforcement, when they get complaints, they don't want to investigate them potentially, my opinion again, but Utah attorney generals seem to be right in their back pocket for a long time. And so did many other law enforcement officers that were connected either through the church or other ways, in my opinion. This is going to make me mad. 13, cyber commissions include providing access to digital, investigative, forensic, and other resources. For example, OUR helps law enforcement obtain digital forensic hardware such as Celebrite, Gray Key, and Magnet. So they're helping them purchase the systems that the law enforcement use. Okay. 14, capacity building. Commissions include providing training facilities and other resources to support local law enforcement efforts. For example, OUR assists in upgrading shelter facilities for women who have survived trafficking. Where? OUR, where? Where did you provide money to upgrade a shelter for women who have survived trafficking? 15, aftercare. Commissions include providing support for accommodations, transportation, education, medical care, mental health, and vocational training. For example, OUR may contribute to payments on a survivor's hospital bills before they return to their home country. What about the first class airline tickets, the Airbnbs, the special resort trips, all the parties and the strip clubs and the massage parlors? Why isn't that included? Because that's part of your operations, I guess, too, huh? Part of your transportation, your education, mental health. Do you provide that for the victims of Tim Ballard? Just asking for a friend. Again, you guys, I'm not a legal expertise. I'm a proven asshole, and this is my opinion based on what I'm reading and what I know of this organization. And I don't have much highly to say about them. 16, legal services. Commissions include covering expenses related to restitution assistance, prosecution, survivor support, operations counsel, and legislation. For example, OUR provides support for human trafficking victims hoping to gain U.S. citizenship. Oh. And right, the timing of that was so crazy too. The timing of all that. Lorraine, I would say so. I would definitely say so. What's interesting to me in the whole time of this too, at the same time, OUR was also connected to Children Need Families, which was Catherine's, but they used the OUR website they had a whole section on there, it's no longer there, of her Children Need Families. So here they're talking about human trafficking victims hoping to gain access to U.S. citizenship, basically. Meanwhile, they were also bringing in all of these children. Okay, anyways, it's going to take us all day at the rate I'm going. Number 17, in 2023, through its various commissions, OUR contributed to the rescues of more than 230 minors and 190 adults who were trafficked. Where? Where's the documentation that backs those numbers up? Because this is new numbers again. Others have said thousands. And this was just 2023 that they're claiming that they rescued 230 minors and 190 adults. Commissions. You notice they're using commissions though. So basically acknowledging that they pretty much did nothing. They probably just financial support a little bit of somebody. While the success of The Sound of Freedom and prior documentaries about OUR succeeded in raising awareness about the widespread problem of human trafficking, it created the misperception that OUR's primary activity is conducting paramilitary drop-ins or raids. This perception is incorrect. No shit. Everybody has known that, but you guys tried to sell that for so long, and you were the ones that were pushing The Sound of Freedom. You were all excited about having a sequel to The Sound of Freedom. Although the rest of us knew you weren't doing no paramilitary drop-ins, you were flying first class to destination sex tourists, in my opinion. Anybody saw the writing on the wall, you wanted a reality TV show. That's what was first basically sold to Glenn Beck. He was the first $1 million that got you guys off the ground. In my opinion, it was all about wanting a reality TV show all along. But you guys claimed that the movie, many people around OUR, Tim Ballard, The Sound of Freedom, came out and smeared any of us that were trying to say, no, it's not a true story. It's never based on a true story. And now you're saying it finally in court documents that it was a misperception that you helped create. 19. While OUR has directly participated in many dramatic rescues over the years, Sound of Freedom is not a complete or accurate impression of OUR's current operations. Tracy, and to watch this come out in paper from OUR, remember, this is OUR filing this. This is OUR's counterclaim, and they have to admit that that is not an accurate depiction whatsoever. It's finally like, ta-da. Well, this is just... Sound of Freedom is not a documentary about OUR. The movie appears to focus loosely on perceived life events of Tim Ballard. Mr. Ballard, you know, the one-time founder of OUR, that guy. OUR did not participate in its production, have a consulting role in the movie, or have approval rights. OUR also did not have any financial ownership or share in the revenue or profits of the film. In fact, OUR was not mentioned or referred to once in the film. Wonder why? Yeah, because there's probably a lot of legal red tape with that. Although Mr. Ballard was the founder of OUR in 2013 and the marketing phase for a time, he had limited to no involvement in commissions between 2016 and 2020, and even less so after 2020. Between 2020 and his termination in 2023, there they are admitting he was terminated, Mr. Ballard performed or participated in less than 1% of all OUR commissions globally. OUR first employed Miss Borys on October 11th, 2021 as a community relations manager. Okay, there's one of their little add-ins. While individuals associated with OUR may have consulted on the movie in their individual capacity, it was not at the direction of OUR. Their perceptions did not reflect those of OUR. 23. In April 2022, Ms. Borys was promoted to an executive assistant EA to the chief operating officer, Simon Brewer. 24. Ms. Borys claims that in October 2022, she was approached by Mr. Ballard to go undercover with him. Ms. Borys claims to have flown to San Clemente, California for training and that she had sexual contact with Mr. Ballard in her hotel room. Mr. Boris claims that when she returned from that training in San Clemente, Mr. Boris observed her to be really excited. Trigger warning heavily. Trigger warning heavily here. This is in every way, shape, or form to embarrass, shame, dehumanize, and so many other things a victim. The victim that we read her statement in the beginning of this. This is in every way, shape, or form to humiliate and make her to blame for what she has experienced at the hands of Tim Ballard, in my opinion. This is their attempt of trying to silence her, in my opinion, by dehumanizing her and trying to downplay their role or knowledge of anything that she was going, and basically attempting to make it look like she was okay with everything that was happening to her. This gets bad. Number 25, from November 2022 through January 2023, Ms. Boris went undercover with Mr. Ballard in a couple countries, including to locations such as London and Mexico, where she now claims that she again engaged in sexual contact with Mr. Ballard. 26, upon information and belief, it was on the Mexico operation that Ms. Boris befriended a woman with connections to a trafficking ring who suggested that Mrs. Boris take boudoir photos of herself to be posted on the internet to infiltrate the trafficking ring. Upon information and belief, Ms. Boris arranged a photographer to take the boudoir photos and subsequently sent them to the female contact in Mexico. Upon information and belief, Ms. Boris' husband saw the boudoir photos and approved of their use. 29, in early to mid-February 2023, Ms. Boris went undercover with Mr. Ballard and the individuals that she calls JJ in her first amended complaint. On or around March 9th, 2023, Ms. Boris accepted the position of EA to Mr. Ballard and received a pay increase from $50,000 to $85,000. Given Mr. Ballard's high-profile status, the offer of employment was expressly contingent upon her adhering to the terms of the Operation Underground Railroad Employee Non-Disclosure Agreement, NDA. She previously executed upon her hire as set forth more fully below. Ms. 31. Had Ms. Boris rejected the EA position for Mr. Ballard, CFO Simon Brewer would have allowed her to continue as his EA without any effect to her employment. JJ informs Mr. Jacobs she had sexual contact with Mr. Ballard on an operation and attempts to meet with Mr. Ballard with Mr. Jacobs present. I'm not sure why that was interjected there. 32, in or around April 2023, OUR's Chief of Operations, David Jacobs, was in London. JJ was also in London at that time. Mr. Jacobs met with JJ to provide her additional training. At that time, JJ indicated to Mr. Jacobs that she and Mr. Ballard may have violated company policy to the extent that they engaged in sexual contact. She asked Mr. Jacobs for the opportunity to address it with Mr. Ballard directly, but asked if Mr. Jacobs could be present with her at the meeting with Mr. Ballard. Mr. Jacobs agreed. Upon information and belief, JJ reached out to Mr. Ballard to set up the meeting directly. Mr. Jacobs separately reached out to Mr. Ballard about the meeting. Mr. Ballard told Mr. Jacobs that JJ's allegations were false. He also told Mr. Jacobs that if he believed JJ, Mr. Jacobs would be terminated. JJ met with Mr. Ballard and was not able to resolve her claims. Here we go. Mr. Jacobs encouraged JJ. Upon information and belief, Mr. Ballard told Ms. Boris about JJ's allegations against him. Mr. Jacobs encouraged JJ to go to OUR's Human Resources. JJ asked Mr. Jacobs for additional time before going to Human Resources so she could go thoroughly prepare her complaint. Mr. Jacobs was supportive of her request. Sorry, guys, hold on. Ms. Boris is upset. Why is it? That JJ made claims against Mr. Ballard and texted JJ. On April 10th, 2023, Ms. Boris sent JJ a text and included Mr. Jacobs, Matt Osborne, OUR's president and chief operating officer, and Mr. Ballard. Ms. Boris stated she was sending the text to JJ because she loves her and because JJ's concerns of her own sexual interaction with Mr. Ballard put Ms. Boris' reputation on the line and was giving Ms. Boris a reputation as the slut around the office. Here is the text message. Now remember, please keep in mind that we have seen over time so many people talk about their experience of how he played them against each other constantly. So please keep that in the back of your mind while you are hearing all of this read. JJ, I'm chiming in on this because I love you and you have left me no choice with my reputation now on the line. What you are doing is not okay on so many levels. You need to stop and ask yourself what your agenda is going forward. Why did you rent an Airbnb to talk to Tim? What makes you think you know ops better than Tim? You say people are uncomfortable with me being his EA, but what if people were to see you were renting an Airbnb to have a conversation? Is that what you were coming here for? Keep in mind, as you explain your feelings, thoughts, and revelations to anyone, you leave just enough out for all of us, for all to assume Tim's ops are running wild with no moral intent behind them, which is so untrue. Miss Voorhees then accused JJ of lying and being one of the crazies that have gone all psycho. Miss Voorhees further stated, I have been on ops. I was on the one you were on. The things you are implying are not true, and it's giving me a reputation as the slut around the office. JJ commented she was sorry that Miss Voorhees felt that way. It wasn't her intention. Here's some of the messages from them that are the exhibits. This is what we just read. There's the text messages provided. Here's more of that. Keep in mind as you explain your feelings. We read that. The line, why did you lie to me about people feel uncomfortable with me being Team's EA, i.e. the survey I checked? There was nothing written in the surveys. His parents, if you genuinely believe you have had a revelation to tell Tim he needs to operate differently, that puts you in the same category as all the other crazies that have gone psycho, accusing him of bad things on ops. Where has that gotten them? Why are you doing this? I have been on ops. I was on the one you were on. Continues on. The things you are implying are not true, and it's giving me a reputation as a slut around the office. Whether you believe them or not, these rumors and conversations you are having are no different than the past blank. So for the sake of the mission, can you please leave ops to the operators and keep me out of any conversations from now on? We all have enough outside noise holding us back from doing the day-to-day, let alone needing to sort out detrimental internal bullshit that can taint the mission. This is not who I am. These are not my intentions. I'm sorry that's how you see it. It will be good to talk at 8 a.m. today. Thanks for coming over this morning. See you soon. JJ files a formal complaint. OUR swiftly places Mr. Ballard on leave and conducts an independent investigation. On April 24th, 2023, JJ filed a complaint with Human Resources relating to sexual misconduct by Mr. Ballard. JJ's claims involved only conduct that happened to her personally, and she gave no indication that the same conduct was happening with other women or at the organization. No other complaints regarding sexual misconduct by Mr. Ballard had been received by HR prior to JJ's complaint. That same day, OUR leadership met with JJ and her attorney. The next day, April 25th, 2023, the OUR Board of Directors held a board meeting to consider the complaint and determine the next steps, which ultimately led to a unanimous board decision to place Mr. Ballard on administrative leave during the pendency of an independent investigation into the allegations. 41. On April 25th, through the 28th, 2023, OUR immediately dispatched its outside counsel to fly to Miami, Florida to tell Mr. Ballard in person that he would be placed on administrative leave because a complaint had been filed against him and an investigation was commencing. A complete investigation into the allegations against Mr. Ballard took place largely in May of 2023. During Mr. Ballard's administrative leave, Mr. Ballard unilaterally continued to travel to promote his movie, The Sound of Freedom, and took other actions related to OUR on his own accord. Ms. Voorhees was aware that Mr. Ballard was on administrative leave and was asked by OUR not to do work for him. The OUR board unanimously supports the conclusion that Mr. Ballard violated OUR policy and votes that he must resign immediately or be terminated. Once the findings of the independent investigation were made known to OUR Board of Directors, they voted unanimously that Mr. Ballard must resign immediately or he would be terminated. Mr. Ballard separated from OUR on June 23rd, 2023. Ms. Voorhees vehemently defends Mr. Ballard to OUR during the investigation and afterwards. While Mr. Ballard was on leave and after his termination, Ms. Voorhees gave no indication that any sexually inappropriate conduct had been directed towards her by Mr. Ballard, despite the opportunities she was given to report misconduct. While Mr. Ballard was on leave, Ms. Voorhees was interviewed by the independent investigator in a confidential meeting relating to JJ's allegation of sexual misconduct. During Mr. Ballard's leave and after his termination of employment, Ms. Voorhees made it clear she thought JJ's allegations in the investigation into Mr. Ballard were fake news and evil, an opinion she expressed on multiple occasions to OUR coworkers and leadership. While Mr. Ballard was on leave, Ms. Voorhees was instructed by OUR repeatedly to stop doing work for Mr. Ballard in the Sound of Freedom release tour, which was unrelated to OUR work and not part of her job duties. She repeatedly refused to comply with these orders. Upon information and belief, Ms. Voorhees took multiple days of paid time off in early May 2023 to travel with Mr. Ballard in the Sound of Freedom tour. On May 4th, 2023, Ms. Voorhees asked for 2 days of PTO upon further information and belief to travel with Mr. Ballard and or to assist Mr. Ballard on the Sound of Freedom tour. On May 8th, 2023, Ms. Voorhees asked for 3 days of PTO upon information and belief to travel with Mr. Ballard and or to assist Mr. Ballard on the Sound of Freedom tour. Thank you guys for being here. This is frustrating to read because they knew he was terminated and that the investigation had been concluded, that he was obviously responsible for what he was being accused of by JJ, and they still acted like the Sound of the Freedom. Nobody came out and stopped it. They never took the opportunity to speak up one time. Not once did they continue. Never. On May 23rd, 2023, Ms. Voorhees received a performance evaluation from Simon Brewer, OUR's chief financial and operating officer, which read, "How could Celeste improve? Celeste does need to set some boundaries to ensure good work-life balance. She is almost too responsive sometimes, and I need to know that she is taking care of her personal life over work life, not the other way around." On May 26, 2023, Ms. Voorhees met with Christy Brangel, OUR's Vice President of People and Culture, and Alessandra Serrano, OUR's Chief Legal Officer, who again informed Ms. Voorhees that she could not do work for Mr. Ballard in any capacity or spend OUR money on his travel in light of his suspension. Ms. Brangel and Ms. Serrano informed Ms. Voorhees that if she wanted to do work for Mr. Ballard outside of her regular OUR duties, she would have to take PTO or go out on leave. An email was also sent to Ms. Voorhees from Ms. Brangel about taking PTO if she was going to do non-OUR work. Here's the email attached. "Hey, Celeste, I've been told that you're traveling with Tim and for work related to Sound of Freedom. Just a reminder, and I know you did last week, if you are working on non-OUR stuff, you need to take PTO or unpaid leave from OUR. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks, Christy." They did nothing to understand that she was, in my opinion, being manipulated either. This is frustrating. After the May 26, 2023 meeting, Ms. Voorhees became enraged about how crazy JJ was and continued to declare around the office that the investigation was fake news. Likewise, in a text to Mr. Ballard, Ms. Voorhees reiterated her beliefs. "JJ trying to recruit others to come at me. Why, God, how hard will it be to get girls to lie about me? This is not the first time a girl has tried to do this. It's old news. It's not event creative. How boring. It won't last. There is no one she can recruit. And if by any evil miracle happens, it will get slaughtered immediately because it's all fake news and evil. God will win this for you." I know, it says. On May 30th, 2023, Ms. Voorhees asked for 4 days of PTO upon information and belief so that she could travel with Mr. Ballard on the Sound of Freedom release tour. In her PTO request, she stated to 2 OUR executives, Mr. Osborne and Ms. Christy Brangle, on May 30th, 2023, I was told I could either get paid to do absolutely nothing while kids continue to get hurt or take unpaid leave so I can continue to fight the fight and do my job while you all continue this fake news investigation. That is so insulting on so many levels. More back and forth, requested time off, her request for time off. That's the message that was included here. Moreover, Mr. Jacobs, who at that time had been promoted as the interim CEO, sent out an email to employees about Mr. Ballard's departure. Ms. Voorhees communicated to him that she wanted to throw Tim and Catherine Ballard a party for all that they have done for the organization and that we owe them that much. I just sent this to blank. Hello, my friend. That letter yesterday was very bland and confusing about Tim's departure. He has no explanation on future plans. Are you able to tell me if there's any updates on current future plan updates? I don't want people to feel Tim and Catherine just pieced out without saying goodbye. They care deeply about everyone. Catherine cares deeply about everyone. Can we have a going away party, something? Where do I stand? I mean, the guy has done just a few things for the org. We owe him that much. Ms. Voorhees frequently expressed her love, care, and support to Mr. Ballard after the allegations of sexual misconduct came out, such in a text prepared on April 30th, 2023. I had a thought a few minutes ago and wanted to tell you before I talk to anyone, so you know it was all my doing and not swayed by any conversation. Next week is a big week. You need to be able to be well and 100% present in the mind for your own well-being. Please stop letting the devil get to you. He is winning. That thought alone should give you enough ammunition to block it out. Fear is paralyzing. He is fear. It is not coming from the Savior, and you know this, but it is so much easier to fall into the darkness. If next week happens, think about really trying to get Catherine to go with you. You need emotional support, people who love you to rally around you big time right now. Genesis 50:20. As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good in order to bring about this present result to preserve many people alive. Number 4, you know this already. God uses every heartache, heartbreak in this world and turns it into a beautiful story. This is your story. Use it. Nothing is going to happen to you. Stop talking to people about this. Let the cards play out the next week and it will be over. You think talking to people is going to make you feel better, but it is enhancing your anxiety. I promise you. I've been here and know this. Free yourself from this. Learn how to be content and just wait. It's so freeing. God is free. This is your storm. It will all be okay. We all love you. Now get home, my friend. Turn off your phone and be with your family tonight, please. Upon information and belief, Ms. Voorhees was not isolated in the last year of her employment. She was in regular communication with other OUR company execs, such as OUR CEO or interim CEO, Vice President of People and Culture, CFO, Chief of Operations, and the President and COO. Immediately prior to her termination, she was overseeing important details related to the entire OUR office remodel, which kept her in close contact with OUR and its employees. She frequently chose to work remotely, but she could have come into the office on a daily basis if she wanted to. She was also very friendly with many OUR employees and had frequent text exchanges during this time. Ms. Voorhees' employment with OUR is terminated. On June 28, 2023, Ms. Voorhees' position was eliminated from OUR and she was presented with a separation and release agreement. Ms. Voorhees negotiated the release agreement with OUR's Vice President of People and Culture, Ms. Brangle, prior to signing it. And then it's information here. Says, thanks for reaching out. The severance amount is too low, and I would like that increased, especially in lieu of recent events. I have had my name disparaged and defamed by JJ, which I brought to your attention, and nothing has been done about. This created a very uncomfortable and hostile work environment for me. In addition, I was told for me to continue doing my job, I had to either take a leave of absence or use up my vacation time. That was not right either, since it was painfully evident that I was not in a position to do so as the work had to continue. In addition to an increased severance, I would like to have my PTO fully reinstated and paid out. I would like some sort of acknowledgement or apology for enduring the JJ fiasco, which has caused irreparable damage, emotional damage to my family and me. Additionally, I would like the section stating that I'm not eligible for reemployment removed from the contract. To my knowledge, I have never been disciplined, have received outstanding reviews, have gone above and beyond for the company in every way, and I feel like I've fallen victim to the situation. It makes no sense to me that I am unrehirable or leave on anything other than good terms. Ultimately, Ms. Voorhees signed the release agreement on July 7th and agreed to the following terms, among others. OUR agreed to pay Ms. Voorhees a severance as consideration for a release of any and all claims whatsoever up to the effective date which you may have had, or now have against the company parties for or by reason of any matter, cause or thing whatsoever, including without limitation or any claim arising out of or arbitrarily out of employment or the termination of your employment. The parties intend the release contained herein to be a general release of any and all claims to the fullest extent permitted by applicable law. Ms. Voorhees agrees that she would not file a complaint, charge, or lawsuit against any of the company parties, including the board of directors, and that if she did file any such complaint, she shall cause just complaint, charge, or lawsuit to be dismissed with prejudice and shall pay any and all costs required in obtaining dismissal of such complaint. Ms. Voorhees and OUR agreed to arbitrate all claims and disputes between them relating to her employment or the release agreement. Ms. Voorhees certified she had no knowledge of any facts or circumstances that give rise to or could give rise to any claims under any of the laws listed in the release. Ms. Voorhees waived the right to monetary damages. Ms. Voorhees acknowledged that her obligations set forth in the NDA survived the release agreement and will remain in full force and effect. Ms. Voorhees acknowledged that she could not disclose OUR attorney-client privilege communications or attorney work product. Ms. Voorhees agreed to a provision regarding confidential information that states Ms. Voorhees agrees that you will not directly or indirectly use or divulge or permit others to use or divulge any confidential information for any reason except as authorized in writing by the company. Your obligations under this agreement are in addition to any obligations that you have under state and federal law. You agree that you will not violate in any way the rights of the company or any other member of the company group has with regard to trade secrets or proprietary or confidential information. Your obligations under this Section 5 are indefinite in term. Ms. Voorhees agreed to a non-disparagement provision, which provides in relevant part that Ms. Voorhees agrees to refrain from making disparaging, negative, or uncomplimentary statement or communication, whether public or private, including anonymous message boards and social media regarding the company or its current and former officers, directors, employees, agents, investors, attorneys, shareholders, affiliates, predecessor and successor corporations, and assigns and agrees to refrain from any tortious interference with the contracts and relationships of any of them. Ms. Voorhees also agreed that should she breach this provision, OUR would be entitled to recover damages and attorney's fees. Ms. Voorhees agreed to return all company property, among other requirements. Ms. Voorhees agreed that she would cooperate and assist with any litigation relating to her employment. Ms. Voorhees understood the terms of the agreement prior to her signature. Before Ms. Voorhees signed, she and her husband discussed that signing the release agreement meant releasing her claims to bring litigation against OUR. This is where they're getting her. This right here. Why? That is an extensive agreement for separation, in my opinion. They knew what was coming. Do you guys think that too? Anybody still here with me? What do you guys think of this agreement? Absolutely, Tracy. HR is all about protecting the company. Tell me what you guys think while I'm taking a break for a second. I might actually have to step out and take a break. This is pissing me off. Like the fact that they had her even sign this type of agreement says that they knew something was coming. I mean, they had to have, because JJ, if they found that JJ's claims were credible and they got rid of Tim, he was terminated. I don't know how those kind of contracts hold up. I'm not really sure. Hey, Elizabeth. Yes, you guys are live with me. I'm curious though, I don't know. He violated. I don't know how that's going to go forward. I don't know. That's a little going to be interesting. But I swear in her statement, she made some sort of reference to Tim negotiated this contract. I wonder if that's the case. I'm really curious about that. Yeah, I know, I'm sure it was so-and-so, I don't know. I don't know. This is where they get people, though. These contracts like this are so extensive that, okay, going on. Here's text messages that say, sexy mother trucker, can I sew them? Seriously, I haven't signed it yet. I want to see them. It says, if you sign, you give up any rights to sue or dispute anything. They're giving you 2 months of severance, not 3. Doesn't seem like you are getting paid for this month. And I don't see anything about your PTO being paid out or anything. Do you have an offer already for your new job? And what the hell happened there? I just want to know what the hell is going on. I'm not signing anything. I need to know what is going on as your husband. Nothing is adding up and I feel sick to my stomach. So this is from the husband. This is between the husband and wife. Oh. And if you remember, which we can go back through again, for my members, you guys have access to all these documents too. You can go look at the husband's statements. But if you look at what they were putting him through, he had confided because he saw, in my opinion, again, and this is just my interpretation of his statements, but he saw her falling deeper and deeper and started to question things, and people had been coming to him and he had confided in some other people. So I'm sure he was confiding in people trying to figure out what was going on. I'm really curious about this contract. I want to know her entrance contract. And it's really funny to me that they're having her sign this, knowing that was there any protection in there about Tim? Because she was hired for HR stuff or whatever, office stuff at first. Then she was switched. Did that employment contract switch when she changed from the one job to the next? And did her employment contract detail what she would be expected to do for Tim? And then when Tim was terminated, did she get a change and sign that her job title was no longer working for Tim? There seems to be many different times that a contract change would have been necessary. I don't know, though. It's always interesting to me on these ones. It is clear Ms. Voorhees understood the legal effect of signing the release agreement. In fact, in signing the release agreement, Ms. Voorhees explicitly, here we go, agreed that she was able to read the language, that understand the meaning and effect of this agreement, was specifically agreeing to the terms of the release contained in this agreement because the company has agreed to pay her the consideration, which the company has agreed to provide her because of her agreement to accept it in full settlement of all possible claims she might have or ever had. And because of her execution of this agreement, acknowledged that but for her execution of this agreement, she would not be entitled to the consideration, was advised to consult with her attorney regarding the terms and the effect of this agreement, and has signed this agreement knowingly and voluntarily, agreed that no promise or inducement has been offered except as set forth in this agreement, and that she was signing this agreement without reliance upon any statement or representation by the company or any representative or agent of the company parties except as set forth in this agreement. agreed and acknowledged that she had been provided with a reasonable and sufficient period within which to consider whether or not to accept this agreement. OUR performed all of its obligations under the terms of the release agreement. I'm really curious. Absolutely, Elizabeth. Thanks for joining us. People do not realize employers and others will have people sign contracts and make people feel that they're unable to go legal when in fact the contract signed is not valid due to the state or federal laws. That's what I'm assuming there must be something in there or something that voided these agreements. And there has to be, though, because I mean, there has to be something. I mean, she didn't go legal and file these complaints without knowledge that she could go legal. I mean, this kind of seems like filler to me almost. In my, again, I'm not a legal expert at any means. I would love to have an employment attorney, like somebody that does these employee contracts and breaks that all down. I would love to hear somebody. I would love to hear one of the big lawyers on YouTube talk about this. Nobody will talk about this case. There's very few people. A few anti-Mo channels will talk about it. Otherwise, nobody talks about this. And it is one of the biggest displays of how high power religion, power, abuse of power, manipulation, corruption, all of it goes. I mean, there's so many, there's every avenue in this case, every single thing, unfortunately, in this case. And it drives me nuts that nobody will talk about it. I don't know. OUR performed all of its obligations under the terms of the release agreement. Ms. Bori's post-employment conduct. Okay, we're gonna go outside and take a quick break because this is a lot to read. Sorry, you guys, I'm rattling too as we read through this. I'll continue to read when we get downstairs, but it's a lot to like read through these documents, but I really want this out here, what's happening. Hey, Happy Life, Jay. How's everybody's Saturday? We're going to take a quick break. How's your guys' Saturday going? Anybody doing anything fun besides listening to me rattle? Have you guys watched what's going on with Scientology? We're going to talk about that too. You know, the cult stuff is right up my alley, but I've got a little bit of a different, I've dropped a few shorts on that. And then I've done one short 5-minute video, and I have a couple other ones that I'm going to do regarding that situation. And then I'm going to put the videos or the pictures of Kyle and I taking the missionaries to the Scientology, and we'll wrap a bow on Scientology and the LDS church all at once and talk about that one of these days soon, because that's a really fun story, actually. Yeah, Kathy, I get that. And I guess a lot of people too are really afraid of this topic because it involves religion, politics, and all of it. So yeah, T, I'm wondering if any of them will cover it once it gets into like in the court system and stuff gets moving more, maybe. Or maybe when there's a conclusion about the criminal complaints, maybe. I don't know. I'm hopeful that there is somebody. I thought about bringing an attorney on and asking an attorney questions. I do know a few really good attorneys, but this is kind of specialized. We could bring on any civil attorney, but I would really like to find one that has followed this and is like 501c knowledgeable too. Hey, Road Rash, how are you? This Scientology stuff is crazy. And you know what? I have to say this. You guys are going to laugh when I say this. There is nothing that frustrates me more, Amma knows this, than watching people cover cult stuff that don't have a fucking clue about anything to do with cults or hype demand religions, or like they're so disconnected from it, and they think it's just this cool story that they can cover and get clicks and views off. And I'm not talking about Rabbit. Rabbit has done a really good job on the Scientology stuff. I appreciate Rabbit and her, because she kind of goes at it from the psychology standpoint, which I really appreciate. But there's other people that have been covering this, and I'm just talking like in the huge Scientology world that are so disconnected. And one thing I've noticed, and I've talked about this before, even within like the LDS, like the anti-Mo, in the anti-communities, like the X communities, Yeah, it's such a thing. It's such a frustrating thing for me. But they, even with those that have left these high demand religions and then they become content creators, they almost try to one up each other too. And sometimes the smear tactics that are used when they're in the cult become very similar to what are used when they are on the outside of the cult too. Ooh, CCK RFM. That would be a good one. I wonder, he has talked about this some. Has he broke down? I wonder if he's broke down the counterclaim yet. I would love to hear his opinion. Yeah, that you're probably right, corporate attorney. Donna, right. And you probably get what I'm saying too. There's just a way that you have to cover these things for people to understand them, especially with religious trauma. People are so afraid when there's anything to do with religion or religious trauma or anything like that. And people are so worried about offending other people's beliefs. You have to hit it head on. You have to really hit it head on, and while understanding that there are so many different aspects that play into this. Like, people are always like, why don't you leave a cult? Some of these people are indoctrinated from birth into these cults. It's not as simple as just leaving a cult. You can take somebody out of that environment and they will still have those behaviors because it's what they've learned their entire life. Indoctrination is something huge in these groups. And it doesn't matter in the way that they behave as victims. Like, ex-cult members or cult members who are victims of certain things too behave totally different too. Yes, it is what it is. That's the other one. Melanie Little, I forget about her. Yes. We've talked about her before. I need to reach out to her. I would love to hear an attorney's take on this employment stuff with you in Utah. I love it. Well, I shouldn't say I love it. I love being able to talk about it. For me, it helps me address my trauma around religion and feel like I have a voice in this space. And everybody that has been in that particular space has such a different story and experience of what they've gone through and how it affects them long term. For many of us, we still have family members that are very indoctrinated, very deep in those places, because you lose your family when you see the other side of things. Like, there's just so many different aspects to it. And some people, when they talk about it, they just think it's content. Oh, we're just going to talk about it, blah, 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 like corruption, police corruption. Okay, you want to talk about LAPD and police corruption? Cool, do it from that point. But do not try to, like, so many people just, it's hard to talk about it if you've never experienced, I think, because there's so many avenues to it. There are so many different aspects to it, and you've got to be very mindful of everything, because you don't want to victim shame. Like, many of these people were born into FLDS, for one thing, like, just for one. Yeah, CCK, I will. I'll ask him. Happy Life Jade. And he's still running the FLDS from behind prison bars. The one that the cult that they've been talking about, the Savannah Soto stuff. The guy that runs that is running it behind prison bars. Just because these men go to prison or women go to prison does not mean that they are not running the cults anymore. Some of them get more power behind bars. Oh, Catholic has its own pieces. And I'm not trying to diminish anybody that has religious trauma that wasn't like in a per se cult either, because there's so many aspects of it, but it's just really hard to listen to people who know nothing about the religious aspect of it, or how they treat people, or what victims go through when they try to leave those, and the shame and the guilt and the humiliation that the victims feel. And then it becomes almost this, like, when they decide to tell their stories, it's refreshing for a lot of them. But in this arena on YouTube, I also see it as it becomes competitive. Like, their stories become competitive with each other. It's really weird. It's a really weird arena. The cult stuff is a very weird arena. There is a lot of people that just do not understand it, and that's truthful. I mean, I wouldn't want to understand it either. Oh yeah, Donna, absolutely. Yep. The control doesn't go away. And Am knows so much about that. Like Am and I talked about that months before the Soto case. Months before the Soto case, Am tried to get me to talk about that. Not try to get me to talk about it, but was telling me all about it because she knows all about that. And to see it getting wrapped up into the Soto case now, crazy to me. Like I could go back and reference stuff that Am had sent me months before, and then it got brought into the Soto case, and it was just wild. It does, Donna. It does become that. Like, who was more culty or who did more shit? And the thing is a lot of people in cults, when you're in the cult, you do for the greater good. You do for the greater good and acceptance of those around you because it's all you know. It's part of your identity. It's just who you become. And everybody's experience is valid. Everybody's emotions are valid. Everybody has such a different walk exiting that type of behavior, everything. It's crazy. Hold my beer. Oh my gosh, the LDS are acting up. Scientology is really acting up too. But I also find it funny that so many people cannot make the connection between like there's one cult that's always going to be, in their opinions, the worst, right? Because they usually have an experience with that. And they will try to like overlook the fact that LDS and Scientology are a lot the same. That's why I think it's funny when Kyle and I can tell you, like, they were dead set. They were really seriously thinking, how can the missionaries, they were trying to sell them on being Scientologists and Mormons at the same time. Like, they were dead set that would have been a perfect storm for them. And it really would have, because LDS, especially in Utah, a lot of the high-ranking law enforcement officers, just like we've seen, are devout members of the LDS Church, such as Sean Reyes, such as Eric Mutzos, who's no longer, but look at all the crap that they got away with in Utah. And the LAPD and Scientology connection, there's that. It's just wild to me, but there's so much crossover. IHOP KC. International House of Pancakes. Is that Lorraine? That's all I could think was IHOP. Amethyst is really on her cult stuff too. Am is really good about that shit too. The J-Dubs, Donna. J-Dubs, that is something. Seventh-day Adventist. International House of Prayer. All I was thinking was pancakes. That's all I could think was pancakes. The IFB. Oh, hoo. Fundamentalist Baptists. That's a whole shit show. If you guys haven't been watching that, that's a great documentary. Preacher Boy, I actually really like. I haven't watched his content on YouTube, but I like him in this documentary so far. Yep, absolutely. CCK, they do. And it's very specific to Utah. And without living in Utah, I wouldn't have understood it either, to be honest. It is a whole way of life, Mike Bickle. Yeah, okay. I don't know much about that. International House of Prayer. I'm putting it in right now. International. There's so many. So funny to me because my upbringing had a combination of some of the fundamentalist Baptists, the extreme Pentecostals, so much crossover. And then people that I have been around are, am followers of Christ. I think we should talk about that one day too. The followers of Christ on Idaho and the unmarked graves and all the children that they is evangelical, charismatic, post-tribulation, and affirms historic premillennial. Ooh. Clergy, sexual abuse against victims. He's not charged with any crimes. Wow. Okay, yeah, we're going to have to. Oh, we have one here. We have one right here down the road from me. an international house of prayer. There's one freaking 10 minutes from me. We have a Scientology center here too. They call it their community. I'm going to have to look into that more. I don't know much about that one off face. Oh, Donna. I'm glad you made that decision. Yeah, the DNRs, the blood transfusions, and all of the different beliefs. Followers of Christ is a very, very extreme belief system. Extreme belief system on medical stuff. And a lot of infants, especially during certain years, died. There was a huge court thing in Idaho over that. Okay, you guys, I'm going to take a potty break real quick, hand you guys to Kyle for a minute, and then we will go back up and finish reading this. We're getting through it. So Kyle's going to take over for a minute and talk to you guys for a second.
All right. How do I do this?
Don't touch anything.
Can I? Okay. Where are all my trolls at? I saw a few of them in the chat earlier. Oh, they got blocked? Yeah, I saw that. How's everybody doing today? Anybody else do anything fun? Yeah, Tim Ballard, this whole thing is just gross. All the people involved, hey, T. Marie. It's shocking that somebody that can be so close to God is so evil in so many ways in the flesh. Hey, happy life. Is there anybody else watching Supercross today? It's my favorite sport. Hey, Moonlight View. Hey, CCK. What do you have PTSD from, Donna? I do too, but what is yours from? Nobody else is watching Supercross. I don't get it. How can everybody not be into it as much as me? Yeah, Amethyst. I'm not going too far down the rabbit hole. She tells me everything that she researches, but
on which one?
Your guys' rabbit hole that you're on right now. It's pretty gross to follow this guy.
The Ballard one?
Yeah.
It's his fault.
Pretty bad human. Yeah, I know. I started it, but
yeah, he says I know I started it. I made you guys fall in that hole, but then
I saw it on TikTok and everybody was like talking about this Sound of Freedom movie, and I was like, how dumb can this be? And then it's like it couldn't be more nail on the head. It was made by the Catholic Church. I mean, you want to talk about protecting children? Do you think the Catholic Church?
Well, we haven't even gotten into the
to represent that
Jim Caviezel side of things yet. Yeah, it's your fault that we fell into this hole, though, and then you abandoned us. All right, you guys. Kyle, then he got out of the hole. I know. He keeps throwing us water and energy drinks in our rabbit hole. He listens to all. He's so deep in the freaking hole on the political side of things with the crossovers of the churches and the cults. That's the part that he really gets fired up about, is how the political crossover with the religions and the cults. He gets real fired up. All right, y'all. Here we go. We're going to go back down this hole. Oh, he's still down there reading, you guys. Hey, everybody. Hey, Running Bear. Okay, you guys, we're going back in. Hey, Ashley Dawn. All right. Here we go. I think we're on. Yeah, he gets real fired up. I know. Kyle is responsible. It's his fault. It really truly is his fault, though, because he's the one who got us started in this. And then he abandoned us. All right, here we go, you guys. We're going back to it now. Here, my buddy is still right here on his little. He say hi to your friends. Say hi. Say I'm still monitoring my mama. He looks so thrilled. He's so thrilled. He's like, what do you guys want? Here, I'll turn it like that so you guys can see it. Okay. We are on 67. We got about 19 pages left. We're almost there, you guys. In late August, okay, so this is just for you guys coming in. We are going back into, this is the counterclaim filed by OUR against the couple, especially Tim Ballard's personal assistant. This is that part. This is the counterclaim filed by OUR against Celeste and her husband. And Celeste is the personal assistant that has now filed multiple criminal complaints against Tim Ballard in multiple different jurisdictions. Okay, just to kind of catch up anything. If you have questions, ask them in the comment section. I will try to catch them as we go. But I'm on a totally different screen. So thank you so much to my mods that are in here kicking ass and taking names and making sure everything runs smoothly. I appreciate all of you guys so much, and everybody else being here too. I appreciate you guys all being here because I know this is kind of redundant, boring content, but it's really important content in my opinion. Okay. You ready to go, Keke? You fired in the hole? You ready to go? He says, leave me alone. In late August or early to mid-September 2023, Miss Voorhees recorded a podcast with Mr. Ballard. Okay. I found that podcast too, you guys, just so you know. I am so proud of her too. So proud of her. Yes, Lorraine, 100%. All of the victims that have came forward, especially with what they've tried to do. You yeeted yourself, Tracy? After what they've done to the victims and how they tried to smear her husband and her, I am so proud of all these victims. This takes some bravery, and they should, be very proud of themselves for taking this on because they are fighting some very powerful people with money. In late August or early to mid-September 2023, Ms. Voorhees recorded a podcast with Mr. Ballard. This, I'm going to remind you right quick too, if you go back to the interview that we watched that the victims gave after the criminal complaints were filed, we watched that, I think, Thursday. We did the stream, and then I lost the stream and I did the pre-record. In that interview, she was asked about this specific podcast, and we will watch it. Ms. Voorhees recorded a podcast with Mr. Ballard on which information and belief was produced by the Spear Fund, a separate non-governmental organization that Mr. Ballard and Ms. Voorhees were involved in after their departures from OUR, in which she voluntarily stated that on every operation where she was undercover for OUR, she felt safe, that her presence was vital because of her job was to befriend women and children, which she was able to do, and that her efforts led to the identification of a North Korean underage sex trafficking victim. Like I said, we will watch that because they're using that against her. On September 15th, 2023, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints publicly condemned Mr. Ballard for morally unacceptable behavior. Here is, they actually insert this. See the last dispensation podcast. By the way, that guy drives me freaking batty. The truth about Tim Ballard finally exposed. Janet Roussan speaks out at 5717. That's where they're talking about that. That's a whole other situation that we'll get into. On September 18th, 2023, Vice published an article which alleged that employees and volunteers of OUR made allegations of sexual misconduct against Mr. Ballard. On September 19th, 2023, Ms. Voorhees represented to a former OUR colleague that she filed for divorce from her husband. On September 19th through 22nd, 2023, Ms. Voorhees told a former OUR female colleague that she had ideas about a podcast series that would explain the couple's trainings and would punch everyone in the face, referring to those making allegations of sexual misconduct against Mr. Ballard. Ms. Voorhees also stated that her husband, plaintiff Mr. Voorhees, started a false rumor that she was being sex trafficked by OUR and that her mother and sister refer to her husband as the devil. Ms. Voorhees also stated that she took boudoir photographs of herself to infiltrate a sex child trafficking ring and that she needed the podcast to be released so that she could get her story out. She exclaims, why are we not getting louder? And that she wanted to sue those who are bringing false allegations. I need to, again, please remember with this, these are, I don't think this is probably unexpected from anybody to see, but she was still in the thick of things. Beside Tim, she admits that. Like, she's still, when you watch the interviews of her, she's still actively working through all of that, what's gone on. It is not as clear cut as they try to make it be at all. Okay, so here's the text messages back and forth between Celeste and some others. These are the text messages that were just detailed. Again, for my members, you can go pull these. I dropped all of the main lawsuits, the 4 main civil suits, and this counterclaim in my members only group. You don't have to do anything. You have access to them fully. If you're not a member and would like this information, you can comment below in my video description, and I can email it to you too. I have no problem doing that. The more people that see this, the better. So these are the text messages that belong with that. On information and belief, Ms. Voorhees was still working for Mr. Ballard at the end of September 2023. On September 27th, 2023, Ms. Voorhees told a former coworker that she was on her way to Pearl Haven right now. It's a sick aftercare facility in Hawaii. My friend owns it. Then here is more text messages. Thank you for reaching out to me. I miss everyone so much. Love you. Celeste, I hope you're doing okay. Please reach out if you need anything. I'm worried about you. You're so sweet for reaching out to me. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk to anyone. Miss you so much. We can still be friends. They can't monitor us outside of work. I just want you to know I'm here for you. Are you okay? How's your family? Overwhelmed and exhausted. My family is good. How is yours? Good. Just a lot going on. I'm sure you are exhausted. Just take care of yourself and your family. Are you guys in the building yet? You don't have to answer that. I just wish I could see it. Not yet, but soon. You put so much work into it. Have you seen it? It's amazing. Oh, good. That makes me happy. I'm on my way to Pearl Haven right now. It's an aftercare facility in Hawaii. My friend owns it. That sounds fun. Take time to relax and enjoy yourself. And remember back to, they also, deconstructing. Yeah, absolutely deconstructing, decompression, deconstructing, all of the above. And it's going to take years. Like seeing her give that interview the other day, my heart broke for her. And I'm sure it did for so many of the rest of you too, because you can just see as she's talking, things are flashing. Like she's remembering more and more things. Like she still is having a hard time deciding that she's a victim. Like how victims react and respond is a very big thing. That's something Amethyst and I have been talking about. And there is definite reasons for people to respond the way they do. And the self-doubt and the blame and the shame and all of it that they go through is so incredible. And it's like, it varies from person to person, but it's such a horrible thing. And to have this play out on a national stage like this, to take on Tim Ballard, who is the face of anti-trafficking over the last 10 years, you know, friends with Trump, Donald Trump, and all of these big players, is a whole other level of humiliation. Thankfully, none of us will ever have to experience, even those of us that are victims. Even victims, like there's levels to every bit of it. And this is just so complicated. My heart breaks for her. And I hope that she has a very good team of therapists and support around her, because not only did it ruin her family, but it's destroyed her. And she's still having a hard time. You know, you can see it in her. You can look at her and tell that she is still questioning how she allowed it to happen herself. And that's the self-doubt part. Is just, we have a saying when waking up, it goes, please forgive me for the things I said while I was in a cult. Yes. Oh yeah. She's definitely having a rough time. Yep. That's my opinion too. But that's why I think it's really important for people to see all of the court documents and everything that she is actually going through, because they want to smear her and say that she was aware. And we were all aware. Many of us that have been victims, there's many times when we can say that we were aware, or we signed things, or we knew what we were getting. No, you really don't. And you can think to many things in your lives, like think to employment contracts you signed. a lot of people have signed employment contracts or NDAs or things like that, not even realizing what you're signing. You just sign it and keep it moving, right? You don't ever think that sometime you're going to be in this spot, that sooner or later that house of cards that was built is going to fall like this. It's yes, CCK, absolutely. And we've heard her talk about that. Like you can see it in the text messages too. If you were in a cult, you were a troll and a spy and a flying monkey, even though you don't know it. It's hard to stand up when you've done those things. Absolutely, Donna. It's hard to stand up and say I was wrong. Absolutely. And we're all human beings too. Like grace should be given, you know, whether you're in a cult or not. Victims are victims and they deserve to have a voice and they deserve to tell their story. And we can all identify with the parts of we've all made decisions or rash decisions without fully thinking it through, or you're caught up in the moment, or you really believe in. I mean, for me, I've been married and I really believed in that person. I really thought, you know, what a great person this, until I didn't, until I woke up. And then I was like, how did I justify all of this for all those years? And then I felt like the biggest asshole because I justified his own behaviors for those many years. You know what I'm saying? I think you guys all can identify that in some different way. Most of you are older and have been through life and can identify in those pieces. Like you really believe and you really want to see whatever that is. You know, a lot of times it's something in us. Thank you, T. Thank you so much for the gifted memberships. Welcome to the island, you guys. Okay, back to this. Sorry, I'm off on a tangent. I just think it's really important to talk about the victims' voices, though, and all of the different things that victims go through. And anyways, okay. On October 10th, 2023, Mr. and Miss Voorhees filed the original complaint in this case. Prior to that, Miss Voorhees gave no indication to OUR that she believed Mr. Ballard had inappropriately engaged in sexual contact with her. Miss Voorhees signed an employment-related agreements, protect confidential OUR information and documents as conditions of employment. When OUR first employed Ms. Voorhees on October 11th, 2021, she was hired as a community relations manager and signed an employment agreement that includes a confidential information provision. On October 6, 2021, Ms. Voorhees executed the NDA, which required her in relevant part to not use or disclose any OUR confidential information unless providing services to or on behalf of OUR. Under the NDA, the definition of confidential information includes all information and materials disclosed by OUR to Ms. Voorhees or to which Ms. Voorhees otherwise gains access to as a result of working for OUR and which pertain in any manner whatsoever to the activities of OUR. The definition of confidential information specifically includes information about missions to be executed or being executed by OUR, computer records and software, trade secrets, and any other information to which Ms. Voorhees had access while involved in OUR activities that is not generally known to the public. Can you say saving face in my opinion? Can you say saving face in my opinion? Why are they so worried about this NDA? First and foremost, they had a duty, in my opinion, again, this is my opinion, not a legal expert or analyst, but they had a duty to protect her. They knew that she was Tim's operator. They knew she was his assistant. That was her capacity. When they fired him or terminated his employment, they knew she was still, and they helped him set up the Spear Fund where she was leaving to go with him too. Like, it seems a little confusing, but they keep going back to this NDA. But was that changed over time? I would love to see all the documents that she signed. Okay, anyways, let's go on. I could go off and off. Through the NDA, Ms. Voorhees explicitly agreed as a condition of employment that she would not divulge any confidential information to third parties. She would not copy documents containing any confidential information. She would not use confidential information in a manner that is in any way detrimental to OUR. She would, upon termination of her services, return to OUR within 10 business days, any and all written or other tangible material containing any confidential information in her possession. She would not keep any copies of confidential information thereafter. The provisions of the NDA and Ms. Voorhees' obligations explicitly survived after Ms. Voorhees' relationship with OUR ended. I can't wait to see them fight this out in court because I have a feeling those NDAs must not stand. Ms. Boris, and why is that a thing? Utah has a thing with NDAs, y'all. NDAs. Anne brought up a really comparable discussion, Kobe Bryant the other day, and what they did with the victim and how that went. And that was spot on until she said it. I forgot, but it's very similar. And a lot of the celebrities that have SA claims against them, there is some sort of NDA in the background, you find out. But Utah, there is a big thing with NDAs in Utah. It's really interesting, to be honest, in my opinion. Okay. Ms. Boris was also required under the NDA, if contacted by a media representative about OUR, to immediately refer to the media representative to OUR and to refrain from speaking with the media regarding OUR without prior authorization. What? If somebody reached out to her for an interview, she had to go through OUR's media relations to determine if she could speak to somebody on her behalf. What? Oh, this screams to me, again, my opinion, that OUR knew that shit was wrong all along and that they tried everything to cover their asses. Ms. Boris signed an acknowledgement of receipt of the employee handbook on or about August 5th, 2022. Among other things, the employee handbook required adherence to the following policies. Okay, question. If she was employed in October of 2021, which is stated right here, October 2021, why did she not sign the handbook until August 5th, 2022, almost a full year later? Why would that be? Changes, maybe? Any of you in here, employment specialists or HR department managers? Would that be an updated handbook, maybe? Or did they just potentially put a handbook in place? Any thoughts on that? That's questionable to me. Okay. A says 5-3, use of communications and computer systems, restricted employee access or attempted access to another employee's computer systems without appropriate authorization. Violations of this policy may be subject to disciplinary action up to and including discharge. B 5-22, if you must leave us, requires every employee who leaves the organization to return all OUR confidential information upon separation, as well as all property belonging to the entity. C 5-12, confidential organization information prohibits employees who become aware of confidential information through their employment from improperly copying, removing, whether physical or electronically, using or disclosing confidential information to anyone outside the organization. Ms. Boris signed the employee handbook and the NDA as conditions of her employment with OUR. But why was it almost a year later that she signed the handbook after being employed, though? I don't know. And OUR hired Ms. Boris and provided her continued employment after signing these agreements, which makes them valid contracts. On or around October 10th, 2023, Ms. Boris filed the instant action, the lawsuit, in direct breach of the terms of her release agreement. By publishing the lawsuit, Ms. Boris breached the non-disparagement provision of the release agreement by making public statements in the lawsuit and other public forums as described in this counterclaim. By publishing the lawsuit, Ms. Boris breached the confidential information provision of the NDA and release agreement by making public statements in the lawsuit and other public forums as described in this counterclaim. But how true is that? Because she was anonymous to begin with. Her attorney spoke on her behalf after this was filed, and they were under initials. Her attorney spoke. Yeah, I'm really curious. This is interesting. Upon information and belief, Ms. Boris made these unlawful disclosures with knowledge, intent, and a reckless disregard for her contractual obligations to OUR. But if she was already terminated, I really would love to have like somebody that's an employment attorney come on and talk about this. Because this is weird. Or I would love, I'm going to see if RFM has talked about it because I would love to hear his take on it. He is an attorney. Ms. Borey's unlawful disclosures have caused and continue to cause OUR to suffer economic and non-economic damages. What? Allegations by Ms. Borey's and Mr. Borey's in the lawsuit in public defame OUR. In their first amended complaint, or FAC, Ms. Borey's and Mr. Borey's published the following false and defamatory statements. OUR enabled a serial predator, Timothy Ballard, to operate with impunity within its organization through the use of non-disclosure agreements, the couple's ruse, separation agreements, withholding critical information, and attempting to pit sex assault victims against other sex assault victims. OUR management allowed Ballard unrestrained authority to conduct the couple's ruse how he wished. OUR approved of Ballard designating Celeste Borey's as Ballard's couple's ruse partner, despite knowledge that Ballard had inappropriately used the couple's ruse with other partners. Upon information and belief, neither OUR nor Brent Anderson did anything to alert potential victims, including plaintiff Celeste Borey's, of the risks associated with participating in the couple's ruse with Ballard. OUR walled off plaintiff Celeste Borey's from the rest of the company, leaving her to work alone with Ballard without warning her of the true nature of the allegations against him and without advising her that other women were coming forward with similar stories as JJ. I want to input something here too, because it doesn't sound like even the current victims that we are aware of that have been public are anywhere close to the first ones. It sounds like what has been alluded to, from my interpretation of what's been said, that there has been potentially settlements for money with other victims. I haven't seen proof of it yet. That's what I'm thinking too, Lorraine, because of the criminal allegations. It could change things too. Yeah, A joint plan was hatched between OUR and Ballard, whereby he would resign ostensibly because of the appearance of a conflict of interest with the release of the Sound of Freedom, in which he has a financial interest. They're saying what she said was not factual, but they're not claiming what is factual. OUR remained silent, using Ballard's face and the worldwide opening tour of the Sound of Freedom to raise money, and allowing Ballard to continue his grooming, alcoholism, and sexual deviancy, all on the donor's dime. OUR continued to remain silent to the public that it knew that Ballard was a serial sex predator, so that people would continue to donate to the organization. OUR had allowed Borey's to leave OUR with a known sex predator, and that Ballard's use of the couple's ruse and Operation Bodyguard was all to gratify Ballard, and that it had no utility to rescue trafficked children. The defendants engaged in a fraud that allowed Ballard to repeatedly sexually assault plaintiff Celeste Borey's. The separation and release agreement is a void ab initio, in that it was entered into by fraud by OUR, or remaining silent about why it separated from Ballard. Okay, that might be what there might be some legal loophole there, that because the agreement was entered into without all of the facts or something. That'll be interesting to find out as this goes on. The separation and release agreement is void ab initio. I don't know how to, I'll pronounce that next time. I'll figure it out. In that an agreement that is entered into to hide the crimes of Ballard and possibly OUR, involvement and ratification of those crimes is illegal. The separation and release agreement is void ab initio, in that the agreement that is entered into to hide crimes of Ballard and possibly OUR, involvement and ratification of those crimes is absolutely void as against public policy. The separation and release agreement is void and that an agreement that is entered into by a 501c3 nonprofit to hide the crimes of its founder, Tim Ballard, and possibly OUR's involvement in ratification of those crimes harms the general public, from which donations, in this case over 20 million annually, are made. Ooh, the 501c3 piece of it. Oh, that could be another piece of it too. While no longer the operative complaint, Ms. Borys and Mr. Borys published additional false and defamatory states about OUR in their original complaint. OUR's board of directors opposed to firing and came to Ballard's aid. There was a meeting of minds between Ballard and the individual board members, defendants, to carry out Ballard's illegal and intentional acts of sexual assault. Well, according to the statements, some of the board members were on some of these operations where some of this stuff happened. Again, sure, but allegedly some of the board members were aware for quite some time. And if there has been other backdoored settlements for money, did the board members know then too? Just a question. There was a meeting, yeah. OUR allowed Ballard to continue his grooming, drinking, and sexual deviancy. The defendants intentionally, knowingly, or recklessly solicited, instructed, commanded, encouraged, or intentionally committed battery and sexual assault to the plaintiffs, all for the sexual gratification of Ballard. The defendants conspired and combined together for the purpose of Ballard being allowed to have sexual relations with the plaintiffs. There was a meeting of the minds among the defendants with regard to the couple's ruse and how to allow Ballard to sexually abuse the plaintiffs. Defendants developed the couple's ruse and had a meeting of the minds with each other to allow Ballard to make fraudulent statements and actions based on the couple's ruse complaint. Upon information and belief, the attorneys representing Ms. Borys and Mr. Borys either provided the FAC and or the original complaint to members of the media or instructed the members of the media to go find the FAC and the original complaint. Personally, I just have to say the media didn't instruct me, being just a mouth on YouTube, to find anything. I went and paid for the documents off of the court website where they were filed. Pretty simple. Ms. Borys and Mr. Borys also held a press conference on November 21st, 2023, with Ms. Borys falsely stated the following: in saving kids and trafficking victims, I unknowingly became a victim myself. The very organization that claims to fight traffickers turned me over to the traffickers. She's not allowed to have feelings about what happened to her, I guess. Mr. Borys sat next to Ms. Borys during the press conference on November 21st, 2023, and did not clarify that he, in fact, was the author of the idea that Ms. Borys was trafficked. His prior publication of the idea that Ms. Borys was sex trafficked by OUR is also defamatory. This is maddening, you guys, because they're trying to smear a victim. This hasn't even played out. The criminal complaints there has been no resolution on that. This hasn't even played out. And here they are claiming that these are defamatory when they haven't even gotten to the part where we know what's true and what's not. Hey, Shop. Good to see you. None of Ms. Borys and Mr. Borys' false and defamatory statements are subject to any applicable privilege. Upon information and belief, Ms. Borys and Mr. Borys published the false and defamatory statements with knowledge that they were false, with a reckless disregard for their truth or falsity, and with intent to harm OUR. OUR has suffered and continues to suffer economic and non-economic harm as a result of Ms. Borys and Mr. Borys knowingly publicly making these false and defamatory statements. Excuse me, time out. Interjection, my opinion here. You guys have suffered damage because your founder and all of the lies, in my opinion, to claim that it's just because of them two. Why aren't you saying this about the other victims that came out? Why is it all targeted at the couple? Or is that to come yet? Is that still to come? Zero accountability. Zero accountability. Absolutely silencing technique. Abso-freaking-lutely, in my opinion. Yep. Miss Voorhees, we don't know if it's defamatory or not because, first of all, it hasn't even gotten to the stage where, yeah, they've determined that. There's a current criminal complaint filed that is being investigated. Like, this is ridiculous. Miss Voorhees engaged in activities that violate the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. Miss Voorhees was provided a computer, an email address, and an iPad and a telephone by OUR in conjunction with her employment. As Mr. Ballard's EA, Miss Voorhees also had access to Mr. Ballard's email accounts that he used for purposes of conducting OUR business. That gives another YouTube link. Upon information and belief, Miss Voorhees used her laptop, phone, and iPad provided to her by OUR to engage in the unauthorized access of OUR computers, systems, and Mr. Ballard's email accounts during and after her employment. Upon information and belief, Miss Voorhees' use of her laptop, phone, and iPad provided to her by OUR to access OUR computers, systems, and Mr. Ballard's email accounts during and after her employment exceeded the authority provided to her by OUR and or Mr. Ballard. Upon information and belief, Ms. Voorhees engaged in said unauthorized access with knowledge that her actions were unauthorized and with intent to view, download, share, or otherwise use information located on OUR and Mr. Ballard computers for her own fraudulent purposes and personal benefit. Upon information and belief, Ms. Voorhees further engaged in prohibited conduct by obtaining emails, documents, and other confidential and privileged information from OUR and Mr. Ballard computers, systems, and email accounts that she has fraudulently used for personal gain in this lawsuit. Upon information and belief, Ms. Voorhees shared emails, documents, and confidential and privileged information that she improperly procured with her attorneys for the purpose of assisting third parties in their litigation against OUR in order to cause damage to them. Material that Ms. Voorhees improperly obtained was attached to public complaints of third parties in violation of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. Ms. Voorhees' acts and omissions violate the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. Ms. Voorhees' violations of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act have caused and continue to cause significant losses to OUR of at least $5,000 in the past 12 months. Oh, fuck. This is unfreaking believable. This is unbelievable what they're attempting to do here. The smear and the silencing tactics are disgusting, in my opinion. First cause of action, and I'm sure they knew going into this that this would be a tactic they used. Unfortunately, they all worked for him. They saw how they maneuvered. It was hidden from the public and everybody else that Ballard was even terminated for OUR for an investigation. Everybody denied that he was under investigation by Troy Wallings for years. Like, none of this sadly shocks me coming from these organizations and Tim Ballard, but to watch them do this to a victim without even no concern, no accountability, nothing is pretty low in my opinion. OUR incorporates that preceding allegations to this counterclaim as if fully set forth herein. This is the first cause of action. OUR claim for breach of contract by Ms. Voorhees. Ms. Voorhees entered into a valid contract with OUR regarding her employment and separation therefrom, including without limitation the employee agreement, NDA, employee handbook, and release agreement. OUR performed its obligations under the contracts entered into with Ms. Voorhees. Among other things, Ms. Voorhees breached the release agreement and its terms by filing the lawsuit, as well as making the aforementioned disparaging statements about OUR. Pause. Interjection. So she signed the policy handbook. Was the couple's ruse detailed in the policy handbook? Oh, Marcy, I'm glad you took a nap. You needed it. Good. I'd love to see all the documents she actually signed, because There's so much I could say. And to put this on her, there is zero accountability from this organization. Zero in my opinion. Again, sorry I'm saying my opinion, but as you can see, they're pretty frivolous litigants. Among other things, Ms. Voorhees breached the employment agreement, NDA, employee handbook and release agreement in their terms by unauthorized disclosure of OUR confidential information, copying confidential documents, using confidential information in a way that was detrimental to OUR by failing to return all confidential information after her employment ended, and in response to subsequent requests for their return and not filing her claims in confidential arbitration proceeding as agreed, which has caused OUR ongoing economic damages. Wait a second. Who owned the burner phones that they were using? Was that OUR property, I wonder? Was it in OUR's policy handbook to delete all confidential and the sexting messages that were supposedly there on those burner phones? I'm just curious about some of that stuff because they all had burner phones that they were supposed to, delete all the communications according to what we've heard. So who owned them, and was that outlined in the policy handbook and the procedures? In the policy procedure and handbook, was there an outline of how to handle sexual harassment in the workplace or sexual assault in the workplace that was happening right under the noses, in my opinion, of other board members? I got a lot of questions. Among other things, Ms. Voorhees further breached the employment agreement, NDA, and employee handbook and their terms by inappropriately gaining access to another employee's email using equipment and systems provided to her by OUR, exceeding her authorization in what documents she viewed and downloaded, and provided these inappropriately accessed documents to third parties. Ms. Voorhees further breached the release agreement by failing to cooperate with OUR by providing all information in her possession that could aid OUR in its defense of other lawsuits brought against it. Oh, they're just pissed because she wouldn't help them. Is that what we're finding out here? Again, I'm not a legal anything. We're just people that are really sick of watching victims being smeared by corrupt organizations. We're just nobodies that are reading this together as a class because the public has a right to know what's happening, especially when this organization exists because of tax exempt status and 501c fundraised monies off of other people's stories, victims' stories, in my opinion. As a direct and proximate cause of Ms. Voorhees' breaches, OUR has suffered and continues to suffer economic and non-economic damages and the amounts to be proven at trial. Second cause of action, OUR claim for defamation by Ms. Voorhees and Mr. Voorhees. OUR incorporates the preceding allegations to this counterclaim as if fully set forth herein. Ms. Voorhees and Mr. Voorhees and Ms. Voorhees made false and defamatory statements regarding the counterclaim, including but not limited to the following statements. In saving kids and trafficking victims, I unknowingly became a victim myself. The very organization that claims to fight traffickers turned me over to the traffickers. Where can you prove that that's not true? Defamation has to be proven a lie or not factual. Has it been proven that Tim Ballard is not a trafficker? I haven't seen that play out in court yet, that he has been not claimed that. I don't know. OUR enabled a serial predator, Tim Ballard, to operate with impunity within its organization through the use of non-disclosure agreements, the couple's roof separation agreements, withholding critical information, and attempting to pit sexual assault victims against the other sexual assault victims. First amended complaint. That sounds like Tim was a part of OUR at the time that was happening. So he was the founder of OUR. I don't know how that's going to work. OUR management allowed Ballard unrestrained authority to conduct the couple's ruse how he wished. They haven't shown where that's not factual or that they did anything to stop what he was doing. OUR approved of Ballard designating Celeste Voorhees as Ballard's couple's ruse partner, despite knowledge that Ballard had inappropriately used the couple's ruse with other partners. Again, they're claiming that it's not true, but there's nothing to back up that it's not true. Upon information and belief, neither OUR nor Brent Anderson did anything to alert potential victims, including plaintiff Celeste Voorhees, of the risks associated with participating in the couple's ruse with Ballard. Not only that, but some of the board members, it sounds like, were on these trips and had potential. I mean, thinking back to the statement that was given, a few of those, Matt Osborne or Cooper or Dimitri, were on some of these trips, according to what the statements say, and participated in their own things, potentially, allegedly. I don't know. OUR walled off plaintiff Celeste Voorhees from the rest of the company, leaving her to work alone with Ballard without warning her of the true nature of the allegations against him and without advising her that other women were coming forward with similar stories as JJ. A joint plan was hatched between OUR and Ballard, whereby he could resign abstinently because of the appearance of a conflict of interest with the release of the Sound of Freedom, in which he has a financial interest. Tim Ballard stated himself in some interviews why he left OUR, and never once was there anything to do with an investigation. It was all stuff to do with a conflict with the movie and just moving on to bigger, brighter things, so on and so forth. OUR remained silent, using Ballard's face in the worldwide opening tour of the Sound of Freedom to raise money and allowing Ballard to continue his grooming, alcoholism, sexual deviancy, all on the donor's dime. OUR had allowed Voorhees to leave OUR with a known sex predator, and that Ballard's use of the couple's ruse and Operation Bodyguard was all to gratify Ballard, and that it had no utility to rescue trafficked children. The defendants engaged in fraud that allowed Ballard to repeatedly sexually assault plaintiff Celeste Voorhees. The separation and release agreement is void in that it was entered into by the fraud of OUR by remaining silent about why it separated from Ballard. The separation and release agreement is void in that an agreement that is entered into to hide the crimes of Ballard and possibly OUR's involvement in ratification of those crimes is unconscionable. The separation and release agreement is void in that an agreement that is entered into to hide the crimes of the Ballard and possibly OUR involvement in the ratification of those crimes is illegal. The separation and release agreement is void in that an agreement that is entered into to hide the crimes of Ballard and possibly OUR involvement in ratification of those crimes is absolutely void as against public policy. The separation and release agreement is void in that an agreement that is entered into by a 501c nonprofit to hide the crimes of its founder, Tim Ballard, and possibly OUR's involvement in ratification of those crimes harms the general public, from which donations, in this case over 20 million annually, are made. OUR's board of directors opposed the firing and came to Ballard's aid. There was a meeting of the minds between Ballard and the individual board members, defendants, to carry out Ballard's illegal and intentional sex acts of sexual assault. OUR allowed Ballard to continue his grooming, drinking, and sexual deviancy. The defendants intentionally, knowingly, or recklessly solicited, instructed, commanded, encouraged, or intentionally committed battery and sexual assault on the plaintiffs, all for the sexual gratification of Ballard. The defendants conspired and combined together for the purpose of Ballard being allowed to have sexual relations with the plaintiffs. There was a meeting of the minds among the defendants with regard to the couple's ruse and how to allow Ballard to sexually abuse the plaintiffs. Defendants developed the couple's ruse and had a meeting of the minds with each other to allow Ballard to make fraudulent statements and actions based upon the couple's ruse. The defendants conspired and combined together for the purpose of Ballard being allowed to have sexual relations with the plaintiffs. Both Mr. Voorhees and Ms. Voorhees published these false and defamatory statements in the lawsuit in other public forums. Upon information and belief, the attorneys representing Ms. Voorhees and Mr. Voorhees either provided the FAC and or the original complaint to members of the media, or instructed the members of the media to go find the FAC in the original complaint. Now that's pretty much bullshit, because anybody, after a complaint's filed, it's public access to it. That to me is bullshit, but whatever. None of Ms. Borey's or Mr. Borey's false and defamatory statements are subject to any applicable privilege. Ms. Borey's and Mr. Borey's published the false and defamatory statements with knowledge that they were false, with the intent to harm OUR. As a direct and proximate cause, Ms. Borey's and Mr. Borey's actions, OUR has suffered and continue to suffer economic and non-economic harm in amounts to be proven at trial. Third cause of action, OUR incorporate the preceding allegations to the counterclaim as set fully forth herein. We're not going to read all these again. If any of them are different, I'll read them. But so far, let's see. By executing the release agreement, Ms. Borey's represented that she would release and did release all claims she had or may have had against OUR and would not bring any kind of legal claim against it. Ms. Borey's representation was a material one that OUR relied upon, as evidenced by fact that it remitted severance to Ms. Borey's in exchange for, amongst other consideration, Ms. Borey's release claims and covenant not to sue. Ms. Borey's representation was false, as evidenced by the lawsuit. Upon information and belief, Ms. Borey's knew her representation was false, and she knowingly and recklessly disregarded her contractual obligations and filed the lawsuit anyways. Ms. Borey's made the representation knowing that it would induce OUR to pay her severance and otherwise fulfill its contractual obligations under the release agreement, which OUR did by paying Ms. Borey's the agreed upon severance. OUR has been damaged in multiple ways, including but not limited to the amount of severance paid to Ms. Borey's. That has nothing to do with the lawsuit, would it? In my opinion, her severance package has nothing to do with the lawsuit. Doesn't even sound like she got a very good severance package. They set Tim Ballard up with an entire spear fund, according to what's being stated. So a couple months pay was because she was leaving the company, nothing to do with the lawsuit. They're trying to make it out to be that she's seeking financial gain somehow, it looks like, and that her telling her story is financially harming OUR. That's in my opinion, of course. OUR has been damaged in multiple ways, including but not limited to the amount of severance paid to Ms. Borey's, the attorney's fees and costs associated with defending the lawsuit, and other economic and non-economic injuries sustained as a result of Ms. Borey's filing the lawsuit and amounts to be proven at trial. Fourth cause of action, OUR incorporates the preceding allegations and attachments to this counterclaim as if fully set forth herein. During Ms. Borey's employment, she had access to OUR computers as well as OUR systems, including but not limited to secure email, documents, and other private sources of information. On information and belief, during and after Ms. Borey's employment, she had access to Mr. Ballard's protected OUR computer and email accounts, which he used for purposes of conducting OUR business. Hold on. She was his assistant. Why wouldn't she have had access to that stuff? And then when he was terminated, why wasn't all of his stuff handed in? Why is she taking the fall for him not turning in his stuff and her having access to his stuff? All this is weird. I don't know how this all goes, but on information and belief, Ms. Borey's engaged in unauthorized access or exceeded her authorized access of OUR computers during and after her employment. On information and belief, Ms. Borey's engaged in unauthorized access and or exceeded her authorized access of Mr. Ballard's computers and his protected accounts during and after her employment. After her employment, he would have been null and void because he was terminated before she was. Upon information and belief, Ms. Borey's engaged in said unauthorized access with knowledge that her actions were unauthorized and with intent to view, download, share, or otherwise use information located on OUR and Mr. Ballard's computers for her own fraudulent purposes, specifically in furtherance of the lawsuit. Ms. Borey's furthered her fraud by obtaining emails, documents, and other information from the OUR and Mr. Ballard's computers that she fraudulently used for personal gain in the lawsuit. Ms. Borey's furthered her fraud by sharing improperly procured emails, documents, and other information with her attorneys and other plaintiffs engaged in similar litigation against OUR and Mr. Ballard. Ms. Borey's attorneys represent other plaintiffs in lawsuits against OUR. Filings in these separate lawsuits disclose emails, documents, and other information that, on information and belief, Ms. Borey's obtained and shared with her attorney in violation of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. Ms. Borey's acts and omissions violate the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. Ms. Borey's violations of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act have caused and continue to cause losses of OUR of at least $5,000 in the past 12 months. OUR has been damaged in multiple ways, including but not limited to the amount of severance paid to Ms. Borey's, the attorney's fees, and costs associated with defending this lawsuit, as well as other lawsuits that they rely on the information provided by Ms. Borey's and other economic and non-economic injuries sustained in the amounts to be proven at trial. Fifth cause of action. OUR incorporates the preceding allegations and attachments to this counterclaim as set fully forth herein. The Stored Communications Act provides a cause of action against any person who intentionally accesses without authorization a facility through which an electronic communication service is provided, or any person who intentionally exceeds an authorization to access that facility and therefore obtains, alters, or prevents unauthorized access to a wire electronic communication while it's in the electronic storage in such a system. The SCA defines electronic storage as any temporary immediate storage of a wire electronic communication incidental to the electronic transmission thereof, and any storage of such communication by an electronic communication service for purposes of backup protection in such communication. The SCA defines an electronic communication service as any service which provides to users, therefore, the ability to send and receive wire and electronic communications. On information and belief, Ms. Borey is intentionally accessed without authorization or intentional exceeded authorization to access facilities through which an electronic communication services was provided when they use the instrumentalities described in this counterclaim to access the web browsers and computing devices for the purpose of using emails for her own purpose. The web browsers used by Ms. Borey's on her computing devices provide electronic communication services because they provide to users, therefore, the ability to send and receive wire and electronic communications. The internet service providers to which the plaintiffs use or subscribe to provide electronic communication services to the plaintiff because they provide to users, therefore, the ability to send and receive wire and electronic communication. Ms. Borey's has not authorized the extent of her access to the computing devices. On information and belief, Ms. Borey's intentionally accessed Mr. Ballard's personal Gmail account that he used on behalf of OUR without authorization or exceeding her authorization. How would they know that? She was his personal secretary. I don't know. Ms. Borey's computing devices are facilities under the SCA because they comprise the hardware necessary for and through which the electronic communication service is provided. OUR was harmed by Ms. Borey's violations and pursuant to are entitled to actual damages, including profits earned by Ms. Borey's whatever. I'm done pronouncing words, and I can pronounce that one too. And it's not coming out of my mouth. To the violations or statutory minimum damages of $1,000 per person, punitive damages, costs, and reasonable attorney's fees. Prayer for relief. Wherefore, OUR prays for the following: relief against Ms. Borey's and Mr. Borey's for general damages in the amount to be proven at trial. For specific damages in any amount in an amount to be proven at trial, and for punitive damages in an amount sufficient to punish and deter them from engaging in such conduct in the future. For declaratory and or injunctive relief, for cost expensive attorney's fees, interest, and other relief the court finds warranted under the circumstances. For specific performance, including Ms. Borey's to dismiss her complaint against OUR and each of its direct or indirect parents, subsidiaries, affiliates, together with the respective former and current officers, directors, partners, shareholders, members, managers, owners, employees, attorneys, and agents, and return OUR property immediately, including all company communications, and destroy any copies that she may have in any form. Hold up. Do you guys see that? They're trying to get her to destroy all of, hell no. Hell to the, I hope the FBI or somebody is involved and they got access to all this stuff. What are they doing? That's amazing, Lorraine. She should. Absolutely should. This right here says it all. Including all company communications and to destroy any copies that she may have in any form. Damage control. And then it's the certificate of service. Holy shit. Holy shit. They didn't even address, you notice that though? They barely addressed anything that the husband said. I mean, his claims were pretty significant. Like what they tried to do to him was pretty significant. Rapper, stop. Just stop, dude. Just stop. You're out of your league today. Just stop. Yeah. 100%. What do you guys think of this after reading through all this? I don't even know what to say. Yeah, Donna, he's just being a jackass today. Oh, what are your thoughts on this after reading the counterclaim together? My head hurts. That was a lot of reading. What do you guys think? You think it's pretty gross? Now you see why I was so fired up about it? I don't know who is investigating this, but I hope somebody's investigating this 501c because this is to think that they have tax exemption too, to think that there's just so many things to this that is ridiculous. Anyways, y'all, I'm not going to keep you on here much longer. It's absolutely agree. I agree with you 100%. It is nothing more than silencing tactic to silence the victims and to shame her because you notice how they're not doing this yet. Nothing has been filed yet, but they're not doing this to the first 5 victims. Yeah, Dynamite, true. Hopefully. But nobody's covering this. Like nobody is honestly, mainstream media and everybody just pretty much has quit. You know, they did the interview in her press conference, but it's like nobody wants to touch this. I don't understand it. I don't understand why stories like this, but that happens a lot. When people are afraid to talk about this because they've made it into such a a controversial topic, and it's really not. Hey, B. Tim, you don't have to sit through this. You're a member, though. I posted these docs. I would love to hear what you take on these docs. This is the counterclaim filed against one of Tim Ballard's victims by OUR. OUR filed a counterclaim. I would love for you to read through it. It's 40-some pages. We just got done reading through it and the victim statements, but I would love to hear somebody else's take on this, like an outsider that doesn't really know the details of this like this. It's in my members group, Tim. It's in my membership. You should be able to see it. There's 4 posts. It says counterclaim on it, and you can click it and have full access to it. You don't have to verify anything. I just put it on a Google Drive. I'd love to hear some of other people's takes, though, and I know you like this kind of stuff. I don't know, T. And there's something. It seems like they are really trying to silence her. It's really interesting that they're not. I'm really curious about other potential settlements in the past because people keep alluding to the fact that there's previous settlements. I'm really curious. Really curious. Donna, I just wish more people would talk about it because I feel like these victims deserve their voices to be heard. Tim was lifted on this pedestal for years and years and years and unchecked. And he did his whole podcast circuit. And, you know, then he went on his smear campaigns and he's done everything to smear these victims and he's still getting unchecked. Like that Tim Ballard cult is something crazy. Yeah, I think you'll like this one. I would love to hear your take on it though. I would really like to hear other people's takes on it. I'm going to try to reach out to one of the Mormon attorneys, Melanie Little or RFM, and see if they've covered it and find out their take on this. I would love to see these agreements that she signed. I'm interested why they're not in this either. Yeah, it is what it is. I'm going to reach out and see if I would love to have somebody like that dissect this and tell me what the whole thing is with these agreements and the employment stuff. That's weird to me, but all right, y'all, I'm going to let you guys go because I've been in my mouth, my jaw hurts. To be honest, reading straight for 3 hours, my jaw hurts. I talk a lot, but not like this. I'll probably be silent the rest of the day, just sitting here like my jaw got to work out on that one. Okay. I am going to post a few more Scientology things. I went through and I clipped out the assault, and then the guy that did the assault did an interview on another channel, like meanwhile, while everything was still going on. So I'm going to clip them. I've clipped them out in real time. So you see the assault, then you see what the guy that did the assault says. Then you go back to like his claims with the assault. So I'm going to do that with this, what happened with Aaron and the Scientology things. I've posted a few shorts on that too, and a couple short videos. So I'm going to do a few more of those because I think it's really important to hear like the actual claims and then see the video and then the other claim and then see the video. So I've been clipping through. You guys know how I like to do my little clip through things. And then I also have some more shorts to come out because there was some shit that was said. That was some really funny stuff during that whole Scientology meltdown. Oh my gosh, me time. There's so much. One of these, there's all 4 of them are there. So you can look through all of them, Tim. It's wild. The one is like 115 pages that we read through on this. It was stated that people were like, even male operatives were worried about coming out when this came out. They were going to move their families out of Utah. They were so afraid of this because this is the couple that they tried that assassination. They tried to set up the husband with that assassination attempt, allegedly, of the Ecuadorian presidential guy, however that went, which is all there too. It's just crazy, y'all. Crazy. All right, y'all. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. It is what it is. I'm definitely going to reach out to Melanie. I'm definitely going to try to get a hold of her because I think she would do great with this. We will be back next week. I am going to dive into Am's story. We're going to do some Am story. February will start when things really start getting back into a normal over here with content. I have a few more procedures the rest of this month. And my body's just tapped out. So I've been really laying low. But February, we are really going to start talking about Amethyst's story, more of the cult stuff. You guys know that's my favorite place to be, is the cult stuff. And then all of that stuff. Like there's so much. The Catholic Church we can talk about. We can talk about every little bit of it. So we will be back into that space. Plus there's another case. I might do that. Maybe I'll do that tomorrow. I want to talk about the Gilbert Goons with you guys and kind of get everybody on board with that because that's going to be a big deal. And nobody's really talking about it over here that much. And it's local to me, like minutes down the road. In fact, the night it happened, Kyle and I went to the store and we had to reroute because it was all shut down. Yes. And we need a chill island time too, and Am's got a million ideas for content too. She's going to start using her channel and pumping out content. You guys, she's been doing some great little short videos too. Please go check her out. Thank you, T, for everything. Thank you guys all for being here with me. I appreciate you guys all. Oh yeah. Don't go to bed yet then. It is what it is. It's only 4:00 here. Oh, Marcy, we were talking about that. You were taking a nap. That cult is actually ran by a man in prison, in Mexico, in prison. Amethyst and I had talked about that cult and that guy, the cult leader, way before anything in the Soto case came out. In fact, when it started coming out in the Soto case, I was like, wait, where did I hear about this before? And I went back to me and Am's text, and there it was, all of the information that Am is very aware. Like, if she had all the time in the world, you guys would learn so much stuff. She's amazing. All right, y'all. I'm out of here now. Oh, Mexico. Yeah, California. I always get him backwards. He's in prison in California. Church is in Mexico. Thank you. See, that's why amethyst is really necessary for me, because I get them all screwed up. Good night, y'all.